Hey guys, tonight we're flying back in time way back before dinosaurs ever stomped the earth, before feathers, fangs, or even trees as you'd recognise them. You're standing in a world of steam and silence where the land is wrapped in moss and the air itself feels thick enough to touch. It's the late Carboniferous Period around 320 million years ago, and you've somehow woken up barefoot in the swamp that will one day become a coal mine. You look around, no birds, no mammals, no pterosaurs, just stillness, a heat, and a smell somewhere between wet bark and ancient tea leaves. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, tell me where you're watching from and what time the night has found you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You breathe in. It's not quite air as you know it. There's more oxygen here, almost 35% of the atmosphere compared to your cozy modern 21. You feel a little lightheaded, as if every inhale is champagne. Fires would spread too easily in this world. Even damp moss can burst into flame with a single spark. But for now, everything is wet and calm. The ground squelches beneath your feet, a patchwork of giant ferns and primitive trees called lycopsids. Their trunks are scaly patterned like the skin of a crocodile and rise up 30 meters into the green twilight. Instead of leaves, they wear crowns of feathery branches, and their roots tangle into knotted labyrinths of mud and decay. It's eerily beautiful and a little claustrophobic, like walking through the lungs of the planet. Every surface glistens. The air hums faintly as if the forest is whispering. When you touch a tree, your fingers come away blackened with ancient resin, the same material that in your time people will mine as coal to keep warm. That's right, your electricity bill is technically the ghost of this forest. You pause beside a pool where the water mirrors the green canopy. Somewhere beneath that surface, things move slow, careful, alien. You hear a plop and something slick disappears into the dark. Amphibians, the rulers of the land, for now slide between mud and air like living punctuation marks. They're the size of small dogs with goggle eyes and broad, toothy grins. One blinks at you as if trying to decide whether you're edible or just weird. You can't blame it. You are wearing sneakers in a world that hasn't invented shoes. And then there's the sound. A faint buzz like a violin string being tuned in the distance. It grows, hums, trembles in the thick air. You look up, and for the first time tonight you see something move through the air rather than just under it. A shape dark gliding crosses the green light between trunks. 2 wings shimmer each as long as your forearm. The thing darts, hovers, and then stills perfectly suspended in midair, watching you with eyes like polished glass marbles. A dragonfly, but enormous, prehistoric, unapologetically oversized. You try to whisper cool, but your voice feels small. Scientists call it Meganeura, the largest known insect ever to exist. Its wingspan can stretch to 70 centimeters bigger than a crow's. You imagine the sound of one landing on your shoulder, the delicate tick of membrane, the soft hum of ancient wind. You probably wouldn't survive this. Not because it's dangerous, it's mostly after smaller prey, but because your modern lungs would rebel in this soup of oxygen and spores. You're a 21st century tourist in a 300 million year old sauna. You follow the giant insect's flight across the clearing. Its motion isn't random, it's almost artistic. Every twitch is a decision. Modern dragonflies still hunt with 95% accuracy, and their ancestors were no less skilled. This creature's brain, barely the size of a poppy seed, runs flight calculations faster than most fighter jets. One misstep means hunger or becoming lunch for something stranger still. Historians still argue whether Meganeura's size was purely due to oxygen saturation or if some unknown ecological arms race pushed bugs toward bigness. Either way, this world runs us on excess, too much air, too much green, too much time. As you wander deeper, you hear layers of sound, building chirps, clicks, soft thumps of droplets falling from leaves the size of umbrellas. The landscape is almost monotonous, yet hypnotic. The horizon curves like a bubble. No flowers yet, no fruit, just endless shades of fern green and mushroom brown. But life is already testing boundaries. Each pool is a new experiment. Each fallen tree a miniature ecosystem. You spot a centipede as thick as your arm weaving through leaf litter. It looks like it's on a mission, maybe to audition for a horror film that won't be made for another few 100 million years. There's no distinction here between land and water. Everything blends. You step wrong and sink knee-deep in black muck, pulling out your leg with an undignified squelch. Somewhere nearby, a creature sighs like a pipe releasing pressure and slides away. The forest exhales with it a deep, ancient rhythm that you begin to match. The longer you stay, the slower your thoughts move. It's not boredom, it's immersion. You're breathing history, and it's thicker than air. A small joke to lighten the mood if you ever feel self-conscious at the gym: just remember that your prehistoric ancestors couldn't even walk upright without tripping on a fern root. Evolution took its time. You tilt your head back again, scanning the canopy. Through slivers of light you see more movement, more dragonflies, some gliding, others diving. They seem to own the air. Nothing else yet challenges them there. No birds, no bats, just these aerodynamic prototypes cruising the atmosphere like nature's first drones. The fact that something so delicate could dominate an entire world feels almost poetic. And yet you can't shake the feeling that this planet isn't quite finished. It's still designing, still sculpting its rules. The gravity, the pressure, the temperature, they're all different here, yet just right for giants with wings of glass. You reach out as one glides past, close enough that you can see the veins pulsing faintly, carrying air instead of blood. For a moment, its compound eyes reflect your face past and future meeting into a shimmer of movement. Then it's gone, vanishing into the haze above the ferns. The swamp settles again, rippling with soft echoes. You realize that the night, even this far back in time, has its own kind of serenity, a hum older than song, older than memory. You lean against the tree, close your eyes, and let the air fill your lungs. The forest continues to breathe around you. Somewhere a new sound rises, a whisper of wind under wings. You notice the air first. Not the trees, not the shifting water, but the medium itself, like a warm bath you can walk through. Each inhale is plush. Your chest rises, and you feel almost buoyant, as if your ribs learned a new trick while you weren't looking. Oxygen here isn't a polite background actor, it's the headliner. With every slow breath, the Carboniferous atmosphere folds around you, dense, generous, and quietly dramatic, a planet experimenting with how alive air can feel. You move your hand through a shaft of greenish light, and the motes hanging there drift more slowly than you expect. The warmth, the humidity, the pressure together, they make the air feel weighty, a substance with manners and opinions. You remember that pool from earlier, the one reflecting a canopy of lycopsid crowns, and realize the same work those trees do in silence has rewritten the sky above you. In your era, oxygen hovers around 21%. Here it climbs toward 35%. That number is not a rumour, it's a mainstream fact, the sort of lecture slide certainty that leaves a neat white line of chalk dust on a professor's sleeve. The planet's great experiment goes like this: grow vast forests, bury their bodies, lock away carbon, and watch oxygen rise like a tide. Beneath your feet, the quivering peat keeps a secret ledger. Every buried root and waterlogged trunk is an entry, and the interest on that account is paid in breathable wealth. Coal, your world's ancient electricity, begins as undecayed promise here. The trick is microbial timing. Fungi that can efficiently break down tough plant polymers like lignin haven't hit their stride yet, so much of the forest dies and just stays. Piled, pressed, saved for later. If the planet had a pantry, this would be it. And the result is air so oxygen-rich that even your lazy stroll feels suspiciously like light cardio. If you had a fitness tracker, it would congratulate you just for standing still. Little victory badge. Nice. Breathing. You pause at the edge of a clearing where a few trunk-like lycopsids have fallen, their scaly bark peeled back in patterns that look uncannily like a repeating crossword. The sunlight spills across them, and with it a subtle shimmer, a mirage in miniature. Warm currents lift from the logs and fan out into the canopy, making the air ripple. You are promised a swamp, and the swamp is delivering heat, moisture, oxygen, and a whole lot of potential energy. One spark and this place becomes a sermon on the dangers of enthusiasm. The earth keeps a written record of these zealot moments, fossil charcoal thinly laminated through carboniferous rocks. It's part of how we know hyperoxia was real. Fire needed less convincing to roar. Campfire. In this world, the campfire gets promoted to wildfire and starts giving TED Talks. You test the air with a deeper breath and feel the slightest buzz behind your eyes. You're not imagining it. Hyperoxia can make modern lungs a bit giddy. The irony isn't lost on you. You could be breathing better than ever and still get dizzy trying. It's like upgrading to the premium oxygen plan and discovering there's no "are you sure" button. A current glides past your skin almost like water. You think of how creatures might use it, a medium to climb without claws, to move without stepping. The forest is already writing its invitations. Spores hitch rides on thermals. Tiny arthropods explore the vertical universe between fern fronds. But it's the insects, especially those soon-to-be sovereign dragonflies, that treat this air as a stairway to everywhere. Their tracheal breathing tubes that pipe oxygen directly into tissues makes gigantism possible when the atmosphere is generous. Here, each breath is like a free delivery service straight to the muscles that need it. If your body worked like that, you'd sprint a marathon by accident, which is also why you don't work like that. A dragonfly passes and you hear it more than see it. The thrum of double wings, the nimble correction of angle, and lift a tiny conversation with gravity. Its control is exquisite. You watch it ride a lazy updraft thrown off by a sun-warmed tree, tilt a few degrees, and this is the show just hang. Hovering truly. Hovering, the original air yoga. It flexes the leading edge of one wing, trims a gust, and resets. Dragonflies figured out what a helicopter would one day imitate. Lift is not a single decision. It's 1,000 tiny ones all made in real time. You exhale slowly the way you do when you're trying to land a paper airplane on a windowsill. The insect wins. Of course it does. The air is so friendly to flight that you begin to imagine you could float if you breathed correctly. You take a deliberate experimental inhale. This is the part where you pretend not to look ridiculous, and for a heartbeat you swear your shoulders rise a little too easily. Creatures will learn to borrow this feeling. Some will glide on skin stretched between limbs. Others will leap and let the air decide what happens next. But right now it belongs mostly to insects, mayfly cousins, and proto-dragonflies, lace-winged experimenters, and big-eyed opportunists. They write in the sky with a calligraphy of motion, and the ink is oxygen. Your mind drifts what started the oxygen bonanza in the first place. Forests, yes, but also a particular arrangement of continents and seas that favoured shallow wetlands and coastal swamps, the perfect factories for locking carbon into the ground. Rivers braided through floodplains, deltas breathed in green, and the world got busy making future coal seams. Another mainstream detail anchors your thoughts. Geologists map this era by coal and charcoal, by fern imprints and fossilized bark, by seam names that sound like old pub signs. 4-foot-high mane, 2 yard each, a bookmark in a planetary diary. You appreciate the bureaucracy of it. Even deep time keeps paperwork. You bring your hand to your mouth and blow gently, watching pollen-like dust spiral. The behavior of air feels almost visible here. You remember from somewhere that warmer air can hold more moisture, and this swamp takes that to heart. Your breath joins a party of water vapor that exchanges secrets with leaves. In the modern world, you'd talk about feedback loops and climate charts. Here your chart is the smell of damp bark and the way your hair tries to curl even if you swore it wouldn't. A fringe thought sneaks in. People once claimed they could read ancient atmospheres by measuring bubbles in amber. Romantic rite, tiny time capsules of breath trapped in honeyed gold. The truth is messier. Most amber is younger than these swamps, and the bubbles are unreliable gossips. But the image lingers, a quirky tidbit that clings because it feels right. The planet does trap memories. It's just pickier about formats. For the Carboniferous charcoal and plant anatomy speak more clearly than amber's rumours. A dragonfly, or perhaps its slightly more primitive cousin, spirals up from the shadowed pool and stalls above your head tilted as if considering you. Its eyes are hemispherical mosaics, each tiny facet watching a different micro-theatre of movement. You realise you are being evaluated not as a story, but as a vector of airflow. You're an eddy with shoes. It flicks darts, and mid-air display time executes a crisp figure 8. The physics of it depends on vortices trailing each wing stroke, little whirlpools of pressure that give extra lift. You can't see them, but you feel their trace across your forearms as a blurry whisper. Somewhere in the distance, a low crackle rolls like dry paper being crumpled. You go still, not thunder. The scent arrives next, sharp, eerie, stimulating. In a world, this oxygen-rich lightning can turn a wet forest into a brief, bright performance. Fire was both sculptor and censor here, pruning, reshaping, and sometimes brutalizing the landscape. There's a reason rock layers from this time are laced with charcoal lines. You might call them the planet's cauterized scars. If you ever roast marshmallows, perhaps don't do it within a hyperoxic swamp. Also, good luck finding marshmallows or a store or an economy. You crouch to study a fern the height of your chest, its fronds splayed like green antlers. Insects clamber across it, delicate stick creatures, jewel-toned beetles, soft-bodied experimenters. The air seems to hold them kindly, cushioning missteps, making risk less costly. More oxygen means more energy available for motion, and so the boundaries of what's possible shift. Bodies try sizes they wouldn't dare in your century. Muscles scale differently, limitations blur, and the sky opens like an unlocked window. The conversation you overhear, because the forest is always talking, is about causes and effects, about how a world tunes itself. Historians still argue whether insect gigantism here was driven mostly by hyperoxia, by fewer aerial predators, or by a tangle of ecological competitions that nudged wings wider with each generation. Some point to later periods when oxygen rises again, but insects don't reclaim those giant sizes and say, "See, it wasn't just the air." Others note the timing of dragonfly dominance and fire regimes and reply, "Yes, but the air made it easy." You could spend a career refereeing that polite debate. Here now, you let it drift past like mist. You test a joke on the silence. If your living room had this oxygen level, your houseplants would start filing noise complaints. No one laughs, but you do feel a leaf brush your shoulder like a tolerant pat. A sizable arthropod, armoured and earnest, clatters across a fallen trunk and pauses, as if embarrassed to be seen. You recognise its distant relative from museum placards, Arthropleura, the millipede heavyweight champion of deep time. This one isn't car length. You're lucky, honestly, but the lineage is famed for testing the memo that said bigger is fine. The air helped them pull it off. You and your modern friends like to think you're in charge of evolution, masters of narrative and intention, but the atmosphere has always been a bit of a ghostwriter. Your throat feels dry, which is funny in a swamp. You sip air as if it were tea, slow and deliberate, and your body loosens. You picture a future where reptiles step more confidently onto land, where the atmosphere gradually slips back toward moderation, where the sky becomes less forgiving and the giants recalibrate. Not yet. For the moment, the planet is generous, and everything with a trachea is sending thank you notes. The breeze thickens, and you close your eyes, letting it press against your eyelids. You imagine the invisible map of currents overhead, warm columns rising from sunlit logs, cool eddies in the shadow pools, a gentle stream sliding along the canopy and breaking into little riffles around each fern tree trunk. These are real roads long before anyone lays stone. Insects commute them, hunt along them, caught upon them. If you could dust the air with flour, you'd see braided rivers flowing through green. Your mind, oxygen bedazzled, wanders into practicality. How would you sleep here without inhaling a fistful of spores? Maybe you'd weave a hammock high in the lycopsids and let the breeze do housekeeping. And to keep the big flyers off your face, you'd hang a net. Not a delicate modern one, more like a fishing trawl. Your landlord would have questions. You open your eyes to catch one more dragonfly in silhouette, a slip of moving shadow stitching across a pale slice of sky. It banks, halts, and in a charming show of indifference scratches its face with a front leg while still hovering. The ease of it makes you grin. The planet turns the dial and aerodynamics becomes casual. You take another breath and feel your pulse relax a notch. The air is alive, and for once you can match its tempo. By the time the crackle of distant fire fades and the hush resumes, you've learned to listen for air, the way you listen for waves, a rhythm, a mood, a set of hints. This dense, generous sky doesn't just fill lungs, it builds worlds. What thrives here floats, a little thinks, a little faster, risks a little more. You look up, and in the green light between trunks, the future whispers. From oxygen comes flight, from flight comes vision, from vision comes the long, long story of the sky. You wake the next morning to a dawn so heavy with mist it looks painted on. The light isn't golden, it's greenish-grey, as if the sun is trying to rise through a swamp of tea. Everything hums the air, the leaves your heartbeat. The world is thick with anticipation, like a forest holding its breath before the orchestra begins. You stretch, feeling the air resist your movement just a little, as if gravity itself has softened overnight. You can hear distant wing beats now, low, steady and purposeful. Somewhere out there, the age of giant insects is gathering itself for another day in paradise. You probably shouldn't think of them as bugs. That word is too small for what's coming. You take a slow step through the mud and almost slip. The ground beneath you is breathing literally. Peat and roots shift as trapped gases bubble up. The smell is a mix of wet charcoal and fern sap, the perfume of a world that hasn't yet learned the concept of decay. You lean against a log so large it could be mistaken for a fallen building. There's something mesmerizing about its skies. Even dead, the forest feels alive. Then you hear it again, that unmistakable thrum of wings. It's coming from above, and it's not alone this time. You look up, and suddenly the air is full of movement. Dozens of dragonflies drift and dart through the early light wings, shimmering like stained glass windows caught in slow motion. They're not in a rush. They're in control. This is their century, and they know it. You follow one with your eyes, a graceful acrobat that glides above a cluster of tree ferns. Its wings span more than 1/2 meter across their membranes, taut and translucent. When the sun finally breaks through, you catch the reflection of iridescent blues and greens colours that look freshly invented. This is no myth or exaggeration. Paleontologists have confirmed fossilised dragonflies from the Carboniferous and early Permian with wingspans over 2 feet wide. You're looking at the undisputed emperors of the air. They hunt with a terrifying precision, though from your perspective, it's oddly soothing. Each movement is deliberate, mechanical and beautiful. You watch one hover, perfectly still, then snap forward so quickly that your eyes can't follow. It returns seconds later carrying a smaller insect in its spiny legs, munching midair like a flying sandwich shop. Nature's first airborne predator doesn't roar or screech, it buzzes gently and eats politely. Historians, well, paleontologists, but let's give them dramatic credit. Still argue whether these dragonflies were truly insects as we define them, or if they belong to an earlier lineage known as griffinflies, an extinct order called Protodonata. The difference sounds academic, but it's like comparing a modern jet to the Wright brothers' flyer. The bones, or rather exoskeletons, are similar, but the story of evolution hides in those small mechanical details. You watch one of these griffinflies glide past its huge eyes, scanning the swamp below. Those compound eyes have around 30,000 lenses each, enough to see movement faster than anything you can imagine. If you waved at one, it would watch your hand move in slow motion, seeing the space between frames your brain doesn't even register. Basically, you're living inside a high-speed camera, and it's the cameraman. You try to walk quietly, but the mud betrays you. Every step makes a sound like a jar of pudding sighing. A nearby dragonfly turns its head not because it wants to attack, but because the vibration caught its attention. These creatures don't have ears. They hear with their entire bodies through tiny hairs and pressure sensors that translate air into awareness. The forest itself is a nervous system, and there are its sparks. Then you spot something extraordinary, a pair of dragonflies circling each other, in what looks like a slow dance. They spiral upward, wings flickering, dipping in and out of the mist. You realise it's not aggression, it's courtship. The choreography of love, Carboniferous edition. The male chases the female, faints, the two lock together mid-air in a delicate wheel that somehow doesn't collapse. If dating apps required this much precision, there would be far fewer relationships. There's something almost hypnotic about the rhythm. Hover, dash, hover. The air hums with the pulse of millions of tiny wing beats, each one keeping time with the planet's slow exhale. You can almost feel the evolutionary triumph here. The first truly three-dimensional hunters masters of every direction at once. You envy their freedom a little. You crouch beside a shallow pond, its surface trembling with ripples. Beneath it something stirs. Long jointed shadows move just below the waterline. You remember reading that dragonflies spend most of their lives as aquatic nymphs, ferocious patient hunters with extendable jaws that shoot out like mechanical springs. Somewhere under this surface a generation is waiting for its wings. The stillness hides a slow revolution, the fringe tidbit of the day. Some scientists speculate that these nymphs might have been bioluminescent, glowing faintly in the murky depths to lure prey. There's no fossil proof, just trace patterns and chemical hints, but imagine it a prehistoric swamp lit by glowing larvae, a constellation beneath the surface instead of above it. You stand very still, half hoping to see one. Maybe you do, or maybe it's just your reflection caught in a trick of light. The soundscape grows fuller. You can distinguish layers now. The drone of the big ones, the quick zips of smaller species, the gentle plops of amphibians, who frankly look like they've already given up on chasing anything airborne. The ecosystem feels balanced, almost utopian in its damp, buzzing way. You pause to rest on a rock, noticing how warm it is beneath you. The sun finally burns through the mist, revealing details the twilight had hidden. Fern spores drift in the air like glitter. Vines cling to tree trunks like green lace. Everything glows faintly gold. You can see why early naturalists romanticized this period as a kind of Eden. There are no mammals yet, no predators with teeth sharper than curiosity. The biggest danger here is tripping on your own admiration. And yet not all is tranquil. The air holds secrets, chemical whispers of carbon and methane, invisible rehearsals for future change. The planet has always known how to switch moods. Every paradise carries the instructions for its own undoing. But that lesson is for later. Right now, the age of insects stretches before you like an unbroken summer. You tilt your head eyes following another massive dragonfly as it lands on a branch, folds its wings and stares back. It's hard not to project personality onto that face, those enormous eyes, the stillness, the sense of calm, superiority. If insects could smirk, this one would. You step closer, so close that you can see the fine hairs on its thorax, tiny sensors catching the breeze. The creature doesn't flee. You imagine it sensing your heart rate, the warmth of your breath. Two creatures from opposite ends of time sharing one overripe moment of mutual curiosity. You blink. It lifts off slow and deliberate, then vanishes into the haze, its wing beat echoing in your chest like a pulse. If you had to describe this world in a single phrase, it wouldn't be prehistoric. It would be alive in ways we've forgotten. There's no rush here. Everything grows as if time itself is heavier, stretched by humidity and patience. You exhale, matching the forest's rhythm. And in that stillness, surrounded by the first aviators of Earth, you feel something ancient stir inside you, a reminder that before feathers, before engines, before all our noise flight was a quiet thing. The sound comes first, a low rhythmic hum, rolling through the treetops like distant applause. You tilt your head, squinting through the green fog, and there it is, a dark shape slicing across the swamp's ceiling. Two broad wings, veined and translucent, flash once in the light, then another follows, and another. You realize you're standing beneath an aerial highway and the morning commute has begun. You hold your breath as one dips lower, gliding effortlessly between fern fronds. It's a meganeura larger than any insect you've ever seen, almost too big to be real. Its wings stretch nearly 3/4 of a meter tip to tip. They move with such precision that you can hear each vibration as it cuts through the thick air like the sound of silk snapping underwater. The creature is pure geometry, triangular head, segmented body, classy yings that seem designed by a patient god with an engineer's eye for elegance. You can't help but whisper, "Good morning, your majesty." It lands on a mossy trunk nearby and the branch sags under its weight. Up close it looks even stranger. Its head swivels nearly 180 degrees. To study you, each compound eye a mosaic of 30,000 tiny lenses. You can see your reflection repeated endlessly, tiny, curious, out of place. For a heartbeat, you and this prehistoric pilot simply regard each other. Then with a faint crackle of wings, it lifts off again, vanishing into the blur of green. The scientists. Those devoted caretakers of wonder will later uncover meganeura fossils in the coal beds of France and England, their wings pressed like fragile leaves into shale. Some of those fossils still show veins finer than a human hair, an architectural map of prehistoric flight. And though they've been extinct for nearly 300 million years, this moment feels strangely present. You can almost imagine them hovering around your porch light if your porch light were a volcano vent and your neighborhood smelled of algae and rain. You walk forward half mesmerized, half cautious. The ground beneath you squishes like a soaked sponge and a startled amphibian launches itself from a puddle, splashing away. Above the meganeura hunts, you can see it tracking smaller insects in darting zigzags, every movement an act of calculation. Modern dragonflies are known to intercept prey mid-air with near-perfect accuracy, predicting trajectories like tiny fighter jets. Their ancestors had the same gift predators running algorithms in real time. You pause to watch one dive. The strike is almost invisible, a flash, a rustle, and then quiet again. You only realize what happened when a few delicate wings drift down beside you like snowflakes. The hunter has already moved on. Efficient, silent, and polite enough to leave no mess. You consider writing a thank you note to evolution for not making these things human-sized. Historians, well, the armchair ones with coffee and theories, still argue whether Meganeura was the apex predator of its world or merely one specialist among many. Fossil evidence is shy on details. Some say they ruled the skies uncontested. Others believe amphibians and early reptiles occasionally turned the tables, snatching them mid-air with sticky tongues or daring leaps. The truth probably lies somewhere between glory and embarrassment, like most of natural history. You lean against a trunk and look up. There must be dozens of them now, tracing circles in the air, their wings are flashing silver in the filtered light. They don't swarm like bees or flock like birds. Each keeps its own careful bubble of sky. Aerial etiquette existed long before air traffic control, you can almost hear it. Maintain formation. Don't bump the other bug. A small joke drifts through your mind: if prehistoric bugs had personal space, humans must have inherited it poorly. You chuckle under your breath and a dragonfly immediately buzzes by your ear, as if to remind you who owns this airspace. The swamp feels alive in every direction now. The humidity presses on you like a blanket. You can taste the oxygen. It's faintly metallic, like biting into a green apple. Every breath feels indulgent. Around you, the forest hums with life, chirps splashes, and that endless meditative drone of wings. You begin to notice patterns in the flight, some slow and deliberate, others sharp and frantic. It's not chaos. It's a choreography written over millions of years. One of the Meganeura lands again, this time on a fallen branch only a few meters away. You crouch studying it. The wings shimmer like stained glass soaked in dew. The body, nearly half a meter long, gleams with faint iridescence. The sunlight catches on it, and for a moment you see the subtle blues and greens ripple across its thorax, like oil on water. The creature flexes its wings, preparing for another flight. You can hear the faint tick, tick, tick of its muscles contracting. No buzzing, no roar, just quiet efficiency. The mainstream fact of the moment, Meganeura's success likely hinged on its respiratory system. Insects breathe through a network of air tubes called trachea, which rely on diffusion rather than lungs. In your time, that system limits their size. Air simply can't travel far enough through those tubes. But in this oxygen-rich era, diffusion works overtime. Every cell drinks deeply. You're looking at evolution under the influence, nature drunk on its own generosity. You watch as the Meganeura rises again, its wings slicing through the mist. It hovers, banking slightly to the left, and suddenly darts downward. A second later it's gone, vanishing into the foliage like a magician's card trick. You half expect applause. The forest seems quieter now, but only by comparison. You walk on, careful not to disturb the pools at your feet. The mud sucks gently at your boots. There's movement in the periphery, something smaller, something nervous. You glance to your right and spot another creature on a fern stalk, a tiny proto-dragonfly, not much bigger than your finger. It trembles as the wind moves the leaf beneath it. Same blueprint, different scale. You can almost see evolution running A/B tests. Then, without warning, a larger shadow swoops low and snatches the smaller one. You flinch. Nature doesn't believe in sentimental endings. You remind yourself that this world runs on precision, not pity. The air grows warmer, shimmering with the mid-morning sun, and the dragonflies rise higher, chasing invisible prey in the thermals. It's hypnotic, so rhythmic that your mind starts to sync with it. You think of the future when birds and bats will inherit this sky. They'll glide with grace, flap with rhythm, but none will ever match the eerie stillness of these first flyers. The dragonfly is a fossil that never needed an upgrade. A quirky tidbit for your amusement: in some fossil beds, scientists have found the impressions of dragonfly wings overlapping, as if two collided mid-flight and fell together. Maybe they were courting, maybe they were fighting, or maybe, just maybe, even perfection has bad traffic days. You stop by a clearing where the forest opens into a small lake, its surface smooth as glass. The reflection of the canopy above ripples as a breeze passes. One by one, Meganeura descend to skim the surface, touching it lightly with their abdomens to lay eggs. The scene is calm, ritualistic. For all their menace in the air, they seem almost gentle here, ancient aviators obeying instructions older than memory. You sit on a rock watching them for a long time. There's something oddly reassuring about their precision. It's like watching the planet test the physics of possibility, rehearsing for flight long before feathers ever flutter. You lean back, close your eyes, and listen to the hum fade into the distance. The dragonflies are hunting, breeding, living their simple perfection, completely unaware that one day, long after they vanish, creatures will invent airplanes and call themselves clever. The mist thins as the sun climbs higher and the forest begins to shimmer. Every leaf seems lacquered, every drop of dew a tiny mirror reflecting the vastness above. You start to realize that this world doesn't have mornings the way yours does. It just has gradual unveilings, like layers of theatre, curtains lifting to reveal yet another act of the same dream. You take a step forward and your foot sinks softly into the mossy earth. Beneath your weight, the ground sighs a deep, spongy exhale that feels almost sentient. You can hear the trickle of unseen streams weaving through the roots, and somewhere far off, the faint crackle of a fire that never quite goes out. But above all, there is the drone, the constant meditative thrum of wings. You tilt your head back and the air is alive. Dozens of Meganeura wheel in lazy spirals above you, their translucent wings flashing amber in the sunlight. It's like watching stained glass in motion, delicate yet commanding. Their shadows slide over your face and across the water, making the pond shimmer, as if it's breathing too. And then you notice something else moving a ripple across the surface. You crouch, squinting through the glare. Beneath the water, just below the floating fern, leaves something massive stirs. A jointed shadow glides across the silt, its movements slow, almost reverent. You hold your breath. Then it emerges. A centipede the length of your legs slides from the water's edge, its armor gleaming like wet bronze. Arthropleura, the original traffic hazard of the Carboniferous forest. The creature's body is a series of hard overlapping plates, each joint moving with an eerie coordination. It's not aggressive, just impossibly alien. It glides past you with the same serene confidence as a subway train that's seen too much. Mainstream fact of the moment, Arthropleura could reach lengths of over 2 meters, roughly the size of a modern car, making it the largest known invertebrate ever to walk on land. And unlike its modern cousins, it wasn't venomous. It was a gentle giant content to munch on decaying plant matter, perhaps humming to itself in arthropod Morse code. Still, the idea of something that big casually strolling through your kitchen is enough to make you appreciate evolution's later decision to tone things down. You stay very still as it passes, watching the ripple of legs move like synchronized piano keys. The sound is oddly soothing, a whispering rhythm that blends perfectly with the drone of the dragonflies above. The air smells faintly of resin and damp soil. If this were a spa, it'd be marketed as primordial forest relaxation therapy 2 hours. You start walking again, tracing a path through tall horsetails that reach your shoulders. Their stalks are hollow bamboo-like and snap gently under your touch. In the distance, you see something moving through the undergrowth, something smaller but quicker. A frog-like creature, maybe with stubby limbs and glossy eyes. Amphibians were the other aristocrats of this era, the bridge between water and land. One of them, curious, hops closer. It has skin the color of moss and eyes that gleam like polished amber. It blinks at you slowly, unbothered. Then another joins and another. They look up, then suddenly scatter, vanishing into the ferns. You don't have to wonder why. A shadow passes overhead. You look up just in time to see a Meganeura swoop down and pluck a smaller insect from mid-air, the victim disappearing in a brief flutter of wings. The hunter lands on a low branch mandibles, moving in a precise mechanical rhythm. No waste, no cruelty, just the quiet efficiency of survival. You realize this entire forest runs on etiquette. Nothing kills for sport and nothing apologizes for eating. Historians still argue whether these early ecosystems were as balanced as they appear, or if we're simply reading too much peace into the fossil record. Some evidence suggests that competition among species was already fierce. Oxygen-rich air might have accelerated metabolism, pushing life into a permanent caffeine buzz. Others believe the abundance of vegetation made aggression unnecessary. Whatever the truth, this world feels oddly calm, as if time itself has slowed to match the rhythm of wings. You stop beside a fallen tree, half submerged in mud. The bark is rough and dimpled-patterned like reptile skin. You run your hand over it, tracing the strange diamond-shaped marks. This isn't just a tree, it's a lepidodendron. A scale tree, one of the defining plants of the Carboniferous. Its trunk can reach over 30 meters tall, but its wood is soft, more like a sponge than timber. It grows fast, dies young, and leaves behind a lifetime's worth of oxygen. You can almost hear it exhaling as you stand near it, each pore a tiny chimney venting ancient breath. A quirky fact to file away in modern times, miners digging through coal seams often find fossilized impressions of these trees perfectly preserved in the rock. The pattern looks so much like snakeskin that early miners called them coal serpents. You smile at that humans always naming mysteries after the closest thing we understand. You keep walking, letting the hum of the forest fill the silence in your mind. A dragonfly passes so close that its wing brushes your hair. The touch is softer than silk, but it leaves a tiny electric thrill behind. The insect doesn't even notice you. You're just another shape in its sky, one more curiosity passing through. The heat rises, beads of moisture form on your skin, and the air tastes green. The sound of wings builds again, echoing through the forest like rainfall in reverse. You find a small clearing carpeted in moss so thick it feels like velvet. You sit down, letting your body sink into it. The smell of earth is sweet and heavy. Above you, Meganeura glide lazily, crossing paths in perfect silence. The canopy filters the sunlight into endless shades of emerald and gold. For a moment, you can almost believe this forest is infinite, that it will hum and breathe like this forever. You reach out, touching the moss, and feel the faint pulse of water moving beneath it. Everything here is connected, the air to the trees to the insects to the still ponds that birthed them. You can sense the web of life stretching around you, both delicate and eternal. And then just as you begin to drift into that quiet, dreamlike rhythm, something extraordinary happens. A gust of wind, unexpected, cool, moves through this canopy, bending the ferns and sending a flurry of spores into the air. They catch the sunlight, glowing like golden dust. The dragonflies immediately change course, weaving through them as if performing for you. The air itself becomes a painting, one made of wings, pollen, and light. You close your eyes, breathing it in. The sound of the wings fades, the forest exhales, and for the first time tonight, you feel the calm settle fully in your bones. The world before the dinosaurs might be alien, but in its stillness you recognize something deeply familiar. The simple miracle of breathing, of being alive in the brief bright window between dawn and extinction. By midday the air feels like honey. It glows, it presses, it hums with more energy than sound. You've started walking slower, not because you're tired, but because moving too quickly here feels rude, like rushing through a cathedral. Every step sends ripples through the soft moss, disturbing tiny beetles that scuttle away their iridescent shells, flashing blues and coppers. The world's first jewelry crawling at ankle height. You tilt your face upward, and the canopy is trembling again. It's not wind this time. Its flight thick, organized, strangely purposeful. Meganeura patrol the air like sentinels scanning, darting, hovering. The sun pours through their wings, turning them into sheets of gold. You can feel the vibrations before you hear them, the air quivering around your ears like the bass line of a concert you didn't realize you'd been attending since morning. If this place had music, it wouldn't come from voices. It would come from the arithmetic of flight, the rhythm of wing beats, the counterpoint of water dripping from leaf to pool. You catch yourself keeping time with it, breathing in tempo, your chest expanding to match the atmosphere's thick generosity. You pass another pool, smaller this time, ringed with horsetails and creeping ferns. The surface bubbles once then again. You crouch and peer into the green depths. Something moves there, long and jointed, its outline distorted by refraction. And suddenly you remember, dragonflies didn't start as flyers. They began underwater. Beneath the still pond you see it, a nymph of the size of your hand-armored alien patient. Its body flexes with subtle precision, propelling itself forward in short bursts. It's not hunting right now, but it could be. Hidden within its mouth is a hinged, extendable jaw, a spring-loaded harpoon tipped with barbs. You imagine it shooting out faster than you could blink, snagging an unsuspecting tadpole, dragging it in. You shiver slightly, though you know this monster isn't after you. It's an assassin made for another scale of world. Mainstream fact check. Modern dragonfly nymphs still hunt this way, with jaws that can snap forward in milliseconds. They haven't changed much in 300 million years because they never needed to. When something works, evolution doesn't rewrite it. It just lets the story keep running. You kneel closer, the smell of algae rich and earthy. The nymph freezes. Then with a slow, deliberate kick it disappears beneath the muck, leaving a puff of silt drifting upward. You stare at the ripples spreading outward, thinking how every phase of this creature's life is shaped by water and air, and how easily it moves between them. It's like watching the planet rehearse for evolution's next big leap. Then something catches your eye. On a nearby log, half submerged, a dragonfly has landed. But this one looks different, smaller, darker, its wings slightly torn. It's still moving, but slowly. You realize it's dying. You crouch beside it, and for a strange, solemn moment the forest goes quiet. Even the air feels still. You can see the details on its wings, fine veins branching like rivers, each one a record of flight of countless hours spent mastering the sky. You want to tell it something, but language doesn't belong here. It lived. It flew. That's enough. You watch as a few ants' tiny black prehistoric versions of themselves begin to climb its leg. Life recycling itself efficiently without ceremony. There's no tragedy here, just transformation. You exhale softly, and the ants scatter, startled by the breeze of your breath. Historians or the fossil detectives among them still argue about what caused the dragonfly giants to eventually vanish. Some blame the drop in oxygen levels near the end of the Carboniferous, others point to rising competition from early reptiles and amphibians that learned new tricks. Maybe it was simply time. Every dominance fades eventually, even the quiet kind. The world changes its locks, and whoever doesn't adapt gets left outside. You keep walking thinking about that. The air is still rich, but you can almost sense its instability, a little too perfect, like an overinflated balloon. You wonder if the planet knows what's coming, if it can feel its own chemistry shifting beneath the surface. Maybe the dragonflies can sense it too in ways no instrument will ever measure. You reach an open area where sunlight falls in slanted molten lines. The heat is palpable. Pools hiss softly as water evaporates from their edges. You look up and there it is again, a meganeura soaring directly overhead. It's magnificent, but this time you notice its flight isn't entirely smooth. The air shimmers more violently and the insect wobbles for a heartbeat before recovering. Even the lords of the sky have off days. A fringe tidbit floats into your head. Some researchers believe that large insects like meganeura couldn't actually survive in today's atmosphere, not just because of less oxygen, but because our modern birds and bats would outcompete them brutally. Flight has politics now. Back then it was still pure physics and audacity. You wipe your brow, sweat beads instantly on your skin and doesn't go anywhere. It just sits there like the air is refusing to accept it. You pull a fern frond aside and a breeze slips through. It's warm, damp and sweet, carrying with it the faint scent of decay. Somewhere close a forest giant has fallen and the fungi are celebrating. You approach the source, a massive lycopsid tree. Its trunk, thick as a bust, lies half collapsed in the mud. The bark is already colonized by soft white fuzz, the planet's early decomposers at work. You press a hand against the wood. It gives slightly spongy breathing. The circle of life isn't a circle here. It's a spiral that feeds itself endlessly, each rotation adding another layer of oxygen to the sky. The sunlight changes color again, mellowing from gold to amber. You realize hours have passed, but the time feels elastic here. You're no longer sure how long you've been walking or dreaming. A dragonfly glides past and your reflection flickers in its wings. You look blurred, like something that doesn't quite belong in this frame. A laugh escapes you, soft and startled. "I'm the weird one here," you murmur. The forest hums in agreement. You find a patch of dry moss and sit stretching your legs. The air vibrates faintly, perhaps another dragonfly passing high above, perhaps just your pulse syncing with the atmosphere. You close your eyes. Behind your eyelids you can still see the after-image of wings, the shimmer of heat. It's strange you think how something so alien can feel so peaceful. A small rustle breaks the moment. You open your eyes to find a beetle perched on your knee, its body glossy as obsidian. It tilts its head as if examining this giant intruder in its world. "Hey there," you whisper. The beetle stays a moment longer, then opens its shell-like wings and buzzes away, leaving behind a tiny smear of iridescent dust. You lie back, staring up at the impossible height of the ferns. The sun filters through in ribbons, cutting the humid air into slow-moving layers of colour. The buzzing fades into a single droning note, low and hypnotic. You realize that this atmosphere, this sound, this stillness is exactly how peace must have felt before mammals learned to make noise. The forest exhales around you. Every organism here is busy living, eating, molting, breathing, transforming. And yet it all moves at the pace of eternity. You imagine the oxygen itself watching, waiting for its next masterpiece. Your last clear thought before the light dims is simple. Every age of life must first learn to breathe before it learns to roar. Section 7. You wake again, or maybe you never really slept. The forest doesn't offer distinct breaks, it just shifts tones like a song that changes key when you aren't listening closely. The air is cooler now, thicker with fog that curls low around your ankles. Somewhere above, something flutters, slow, steady, deliberate. You don't look up immediately. You let the sound build, let the anticipation stretch like silk between heartbeats. And then you see them, dragonflies in formation. Not chaotic, not random, but arranged. Their wings beat in faint unison, a rhythm that feels intentional. They're hunting. You stay very still watching as the predators of the Carboniferous morning rise into their invisible battlefield. Below them, a cloud of smaller insects, mayflies, primitive gnats, and strange shrimp-like creatures with wings too new to trust swarm above the ponds. The air above the swamp looks alive, shifting like smoke. A meganeura darts into the swarm. The move is surgical. It doesn't lunge blindly, it calculates. The dragonfly's eyes catch light and split it into motion vectors. Each glimmer of wing or leg becomes data. In less than half a second, it adjusts its pitch, folds its back wings slightly and snap. prey gone. The Meganecura doesn't stop flying. It just chews mid-air as if multitasking were a divine right. You realize that what you're seeing is one of the oldest forms of precision hunting on the planet. Before claws, before talons, before coordinated wolf packs, there were dragonflies, each one a solitary assassin with an almost unfair level of elegance. Mainstream facts check, modern dragonflies catch up to 95% of their prey, an efficiency rate unmatched by nearly any other predator. They do it by predictive targeting, the ability to calculate where their prey will be, not where it is. And their ancient ancestors likely shared that gift, which means you're watching the original blueprints of strategic intelligence unfold in real time. You track one individual with your eyes as it loops around, accelerating sharply. The wings blur into transparency. The creature dives, pulls up and executes a maneuver that feels almost arrogant, an upward spiral that ends in a sudden stillness. Hovering, perfect equilibrium between gravity and grace. You feel your chest tighten not from fear but admiration. It's flight as art, and it's happening millions of years before birds even existed. You wonder how something so small could teach physics to the sky itself. Then, as if to show off, two dragonflies collide mid-air. For a brief second, they tumble together in a whirl of wings and legs before disentangling and soaring in opposite directions. You laugh under your breath. Apparently even perfect hunters can have traffic accidents. The forest continues its slow breathing. Steam rises from the pools. Amphibians croak somewhere in the underbrush, their low notes echoing like underwater bells. The dragonflies don't seem bothered by the noise they hunt through it, slicing the sound into ribbons. You move closer to one of the pools, crouching low. The surface is pocked with ripples, each marking the site of a kill. You see flashes of silver beneath the surface, small fish-like creatures startled by the shadows above. Every few seconds, a Meganecura dips low to touch the water, wings, spread body perfectly balanced. Each dip is followed by a small flutter of disturbance, a ripple that expands outward, catching the reflection of sky and fern. There's a particular beauty in their precision. You can almost feel the air currents. They ride subtle, invisible rivers moving through the forest. They navigate those currents instinctively, as if born fluent in a language the rest of life is still trying to learn. Historians still argue whether these early aerial predators hunted cooperatively, or if what you're seeing is just the illusion of coordination. Some paleobiologists insist that their flight paths sometimes formed patterns too consistent to be coincidence, swirling arcs, intersecting spirals, even loose grids of motion that look suspiciously like group strategy. Others roll their eyes and remind everyone that humans have a bad habit of seeing choreography where there's only chaos. Either way, the result is mesmerizing. You stand there letting the hum of the wings blend with your own breath. For a moment, it feels as though you're part of the system, another participant in this massive silent conversation between air and hunger. One of the dragonflies breaks formation and hovers near your shoulder. You can see the fine network of veins running through its wings, shimmering faintly like molten glass. The creature tilts its head, and for half a second you lock eyes. The reflection in its compound lenses is kaleidoscopic, tiny fragments of your face multiplied endlessly, staring back. You smile. It doesn't. It's too busy being eternal. A soft wind drifts through the clearing, and the dragonfly to hilts, catching the current. It glides forward, wings hardly moving. The way it uses the air, it's as if it knows something you don't, as if gravity itself gives it special privileges. You take a few careful steps backward, sinking slightly into the moss. The heat of the day builds again, wrapping around you like a heavy quilt. Sweat beads on your neck, and you wipe it away absent-mindedly. Every breath feels different now, thicker, sweeter, slightly dizzying. You realize that in an oxygen-rich world like this, even breathing could feel like a high. You hear another sound, lighter this time, like a flute. You glance to your left and see two Meganecura in a kind of aerial courtship display. Their wings overlap in flashes of color, catching sunlight like prisms. They weave and loop, moving closer each time until they meet midair. They clasp for a brief second, spinning together before parting again. It's not aggression, it's attraction though. Admittedly, the difference between the two can be thin. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your mind. Some scientists believe early insects developed complex mating dances, not out of romance, but because flight required precise synchronization. Mistiming could mean falling into the nearest swamp. Romance by necessity. Nature's original. If we're not coordinated, we die. The dance continues above you, rhythmic and oddly moving. You realize you've been holding your breath. You let it out slowly, the two insects part one landing on a branch while the other hovers for a moment longer, as if considering the performance a success. You sit on a rock half in shade, half in sunlight. Around you the forest vibrates with life. Tiny creatures crawl across bark birds that aren't yet birds, call faintly in the distance, and the dragonflies rule the air unconcerned. You watch their shadows cross over the ferns like silent ghosts. It's as hard to imagine that one day this entire dynasty will end. Harder still to imagine that even in extinction they'll leave behind the blueprint for everything that comes after birds, bats, airplanes, drones. Every flight owes them something. The air grows still again. The dragonflies disperse their hum, fading into a low murmur. You lean back, closing your eyes. The warmth of the earth seeps up through your palms. And for a moment you feel what the world must have felt like before memory, no language, no noise, just instinct and air. You realize that these creatures, the hunters of the first sky, don't just move through the atmosphere. They are the atmosphere. Their wings are its heartbeat. Their flight its dream. You smile to yourself thinking humans build planes? Dragonflies just remember how to be wind. The sun creeps higher and the forest warms to a low golden hum. The light here doesn't fall in beams, it pools like honey spilled across the canopy. Every wing beat seems to stir it. You can feel the weight of the air pressing softly against your skin, dense with life, rich with everything that can grow, crawl or fly. You find yourself following one particular dragonfly, a Meganeura, broad-shouldered by insect standards with wings that glint like smoke-tinted glass. It hovers near a broken lycopsid trunk, motionless except for the faint shimmer of muscles working beneath its shell. Its head tilts left then right the way an engineer studies a blueprint. Then in a movement so fast you almost miss it, it lunges forward upward, then sideways pivoting mid-air with mathematical precision. You blink and its prey is gone. Only a few dust motes and the echo of wing beats remain. That's when you start to think about anatomy, not because you want to, but because this creature demands it. It's too perfect to exist without some secret machinery. You step closer, watching it glide back toward the trunk where it perches again to rest. You take in the details, 4 wings, not 2. Each moves independently, not like a bird's synchronized flaps, but in counterpoint like a 4-handed piano duet. The front wings push forward while the rear wings pull back, creating a continuous cycle of lift and propulsion. It's the world's first perpetual motion trick, and it works. Mainstream fact of the moment, modern dragonflies can move each wing separately, allowing them to hover, fly backward, or even upside down for brief moments. They can accelerate to nearly 35 miles per hour, and their ancestors likely matched or exceeded those speeds in this heavier air. You crouch imagining what it must feel like to have 4 independent instruments playing the same melody, each muscle responding to invisible turbulence. Every wing a conversation with the air. You realize that flight for them isn't an act of escape, it's an argument with gravity that they never lose. You remember reading somewhere that dragonflies are among the few insects capable of sustained gliding. They don't always need to beat their wings, sometimes they simply ride the air, adjusting micro-angles like a sailor reading wind against canvas. Watching this Meganeura now, you understand, it lifts gently its 4 wings, tilted slightly upward, tail down, body perfectly level. The air catches it and carries it forward, effortless, unhurried. The original paraglider. And there's a strange quiet beauty to that, the way it lets the environment do the work. The forest feels complicit in its flight, each gust of wind a partner, each thermal a gift. Historians still argue whether early insects could truly hover as modern dragonflies do, or whether the dense atmosphere gave the illusion of stillness. Some say the air's weight did half the work. Others argue that their muscle structure was already advanced enough for genuine stability. Either way, the result is the same perfect poise sculpted by time and chemistry. You find yourself mimicking its movement without realizing its shoulders loose, head tilted, trying to balance invisible wings. You chuckle softly, catching yourself. If only it were that easy. The dragonfly darts upward again, tracing lazy figure eights. You notice the faint shadows it casts on the fern leaves below a dance of geometry and sunlight. Its body flashes silver, then bronze. It banks sharply to the left and skims above a nearby pond, its reflection ghosting across the surface. The air ripples around it like fabric. You wonder if it feels the thrill of flight, or if to a creature that's never known walking, it's just being. Maybe flight doesn't feel like freedom when you've never been grounded. Maybe it's simply the way existence happens. You sit beside the pond, the mud cool beneath your palms. Small ripples spread where frogs or nymphs shift under the surface. A dragonfly lands near you, this one, smaller, darker, its wings trimmed with amber veins. Its body pulses as it breathes. Yes, insects breathe, not with lungs but through spiracles, tiny openings along their sides. You watch the faint rhythmic movement, the body flexing like a miniature bellows. It's oddly hypnotic. A fringe tidbit slips into your memory. Scientists once thought dragonflies couldn't fly in rain because their wings would stick together. That myth lingered until slow-motion cameras proved otherwise. They handle drizzle better than most birds. In fact, their wings are coated with microtextures that repel water, a kind of prehistoric nanotechnology millions of years before anyone thought of the word hydrophobic. You can't help smiling. Nature's always been the better engineer. You reach out just to see how close you can get. The dragonfly doesn't flee, it watches. You can see every detail, the compound eyes, the fine hairs along the thorax, the faint shimmer where veins meet wing membrane. Its eyes move slightly, scanning. You realize for the first time that this isn't random curiosity. It's mapping you, measuring your heat, your shadow, the way your breath shifts the air. It's like being seen by the forest itself. Then with no warning, it lifts off the wings, flashing in the sunlight. The sound it makes is soft, but it carries power like the smallest thunderclap you can imagine. It vanishes upward, becoming a flicker between the trees. You lean back, closing your eyes. The world around you seems to breathe in slow motion. You can still hear the hum, dozens, maybe hundreds of dragonflies crossing overhead, their combined vibrations merging into something almost musical. It's the hum of invention, of evolution, stretching its new muscles. You start to think about wings as an idea. Every age of life invents them differently. Insects with veins of chitin, pterosaurs with membranes of skin, birds with feathers, humans with metal. The materials change, but the desire stays constant to move beyond the weight of the earth, even if only for a moment. The swamp is quiet now, except for the gentle clatter of leaves. You glance upward and see a new movement, smaller, sharper. Not Meganeura this time, but another kind of flyer. His body is leaner, its wings now narrower. Maybe a different genus, or maybe just evolution's next experiment. You watch it hover, then dart upward into a streak of sunlight. For a second, it looks as though the light itself has learned to fly. A dragonfly skims so close to your face that you can feel the whisper of air it displaces. You blink, smiling at the absurd intimacy of it. In another time, people will call dragonflies messengers or spirits, but right now, they're simply the world's first proof that air can be shaped. You take a deep breath and feel that same air move through you. Thick, ancient, generous. You close your eyes and listen again to the rhythm of wings, faster now, sharper, relentless. It's the sound of evolution discovering joy. And though you know the age of these giants will end one day, for now, they own the sky. Every breath you take is borrowed from their labor. Every breeze you feel is a ghost of their flight. You whisper softly into the air, unsure why teach us how to stay aloft. The forest glows differently now, less like a painting, more like a fever dream. The light has gone syrupy, molten gold dripping between the ferns. You wade through it, feeling every inch of the air. It's as though the atmosphere itself is thicker today, a warm ocean you have to push through. Above, the dragonflies trace long, deliberate patterns against the canopy, glinting like shards of copper and glass. You realize you've stopped walking, you're just listening to the air, to the hum of life testing its boundaries. Every few moments, something breaks the quiet, a faint pop, as a bubble of swamp gas rises through the mud, or the delicate crash of a dragonfly clipping a fern on a reckless dive. The air smells faintly metallic, and when you taste it, it's like licking the inside of a penny. That's oxygen saturation for you, too clean to be comforting. You approach a cluster of lycopsid trunks that have fallen together, forming a kind of bridge over a shallow stream. You step carefully across your reflection trailing below. The surface is broken by drifting patches of foam, each glowing slightly green with trapped sunlight. Beneath the water, you glimpse shadows moving, slender bodies, twitching tails. Fish. Not quite. These are paleonisciforms, primitive armored swimmers with scales like tin plates. They flash and vanish in the gloom, and on the bank beside them, basking in the humid haze, lies one of the forest's quieter residents, an amphibian, broad-headed and lumpy with a mouth too wide for its face. Its eyes blink slowly as though surprised by the concept of day. Its skin is slick, patterned with dark marbling that helps it disappear into the mud. When it exhales, bubbles roll from its nostrils and drift upward. You freeze. The creature tilts its head just a fraction sun and then plop it slides back into the water with the kind of elegance only clumsiness can achieve. The ripples reach your boots, tugging gently. You smile. The land is learning to breathe. Everything here seems halfway between two worlds. It's easy to forget that at this point in Earth's story, land animals are still a recent invention, still testing the rules. You picture the first brave amphibian pulling itself out of a pond, blinking against sunlight and thinking, well, that was a choice. Mainstream fact, amphibians were the pioneers of terrestrial life. Their ancestors, lobe-finned fish like Tiktaalik, had developed sturdy bones in their fins, proto-legs, that let them clamber from water to land in search of food or new ponds. By this Carboniferous age, some of their descendants had grown large over 2 meters and ruled the swamp margins as apex hunters. Yet here, amid the rain of insects, they seem almost shy, content to watch from the edges, while the air's new monarchs patrol above. A shadow flickers across the stream. You look up. Another Meganeura glides silently overhead, wings glimmering like stretched quartz. It banks, dives, and dips low over the water. A ripple follows it, then another. You think it's drinking, but no, it's hunting again. A smaller flyer tries to zigzag away, but the predator's reaction is instant. The air itself seems to sharpen as it strikes. Historians still argue whether dragonflies used ambush tactics or active pursuit in this era. Some fossil wing wear suggests long flights, marathon hunts over ponds and wetlands. Others claim they were short-burst sprinters relying on ambush and surprise. The truth, like the insect itself, probably hovered somewhere in between. You imagine that perfect moment of interception, how the dragonfly must sense microcurrents, wing beats, temperature shifts, even the faint distortion of air pressure caused by its prey's movement. It's all data, it's all instinct. Every dive is both art and arithmetic. The insect lands on a fern stalk near you. Its weight bends the stem slightly and droplets of condensation slide down to the ground. The creature cleans its face with one leg, rubbing in small circular motions like a cat washing its cheeks. The behavior feels startlingly familiar, domestic, almost tender. You catch yourself whispering, "You've been doing that for hundreds of millions of years, haven't you?" The dragonfly tilts its head, and for an instant you imagine it nodding. Then with a lazy flutter it launches again. You step back, bumping into the trunk of a tree. The bark leaves a faint dusty imprint on your shoulder. You glance down and notice a strange pattern along the trunk, vertical grooves that twist and interlock like reptile scales. Another lepidodendron. They're everywhere here, towering like alien skyscrapers. You run your hand along the grooves and for a moment it feels warm, alive. These trees don't have rings like modern ones. They grow in segments, each adding a new layer of scale-like bark as they climb. If you listen closely, you can hear the faint creak of sap moving upward, the pulse of a forest building the air you're breathing. You move again, ducking beneath a canopy of broad ferns. The sound changes here, quieter, more intimate. The buzz of dragonflies softens to a background hum. It's cooler, darker, the air heavy with the smell of wet soil. You crouch and brush your fingers through the dirt. It's rich, almost black, shot through with tiny threads of decomposing matter. This is the beginning of coal, the slow burial of abundance. You smile to yourself. Millions of years from now, someone will burn this forest to boil water and call it progress. You wish you could warn the trees, but the irony feels too human for a world this young. A rustling sound draws your attention. To your left, a dragonfly hovers just above a small patch of mushrooms. Its wings beat slower here, the rhythm softer, more careful. You realize it's laying eggs, touching the surface of the damp soil with the tip of its abdomen. Each touch leaves behind a small droplet of life, tiny capsules that will sink into the moisture and wait for rain to fill the next pond. Generations planned in silence. You kneel, fascinated. The insect seems utterly focused, unbothered by your presence. It finishes its task, lifts off, and disappears into the sunlight. You can't help but whisper, "Good luck, little architects." The forest around you exhales again. You can feel the wind changing. The dragonfly's hum rises slightly in pitch. Something in the air shifts pressure maybe, or mood. You can't name it, but you feel it in your bones. The calm of the swamp has a heartbeat now. You look up. High above the canopy, the Meganeura are climbing higher than before, chasing thermals that spiral into the bright afternoon. They vanish into the glare one by one until only their shadows flicker across the leaves. The sky feels suddenly larger, emptier. You realize this is what the birth of flight must have felt like, not thunderous, not explosive, but a quiet, a negotiation between muscle and wind, a whisper that would one day become everything with wings. You stand still, the air still humming faintly around you. The dragonflies are gone for now, but the sound lingers a ghost of motion. You take a breath and close your eyes. If you listen hard enough, you can still hear it, the soft arithmetic of wings calculating eternity. The afternoon deepens into a colour you don't have a name for, something between amber and smoke, a kind of slow gold that seeps through the forest instead of falling on it. Every sound feels muffled by the warmth, and the air carries that dense, sweet scent of wet bark and resin that makes your lungs feel sticky. You wipe your forehead. Even your sweat feels prehistoric heavier, somehow, as if each droplet contains a micro-history of this humid world. You start following a narrow channel of water winding through the swamp, a path marked by the bodies of fallen ferns and collapsed horsetails. Each step pulls free a muted squelch, the mud sighing as it closes behind you. Above the world hums. Meganeura and their smaller cousins drift lazily, tracing the air currents like living kites. Their shadows glide over your arms, long and elegant bending, as they pass across the uneven terrain. And then you see it, one of the strangest hunts you'll ever witness. A large amphibian, perhaps a Crassigyrinus, rises halfway from the water. Its head alone could fill your lap. It's waiting absolutely still, its eyes breaking the surface like twin marbles. You follow its gaze. A dragonfly hovers above, dipping now and then to touch the surface. You can practically feel the tension in the air. Then, like a coiled spring, the amphibian strikes. A flash of water, a gulp, a ripple. The pond goes still again. No dramatic struggle, no cinematic splash. Just the quiet efficiency of hunger. The predator sinks back beneath the surface, and the only trace of violence is a single detached wing, drifting across the water, catching the sunlight one last time. You stand frozen for a moment, feeling the strange peace of it all. In this world, death isn't an interruption, it's part of the rhythm. The forest doesn't mourn, it just keeps breathing. You walk on thinking about that. The dragonflies may own the sky, but even they must bow to the physics of appetite. And yet they've adapted. Most of them hunt high now, far above the water, safe from lunge surprises. You can hear them up there, their wing beats faint, blending into a single steady hum, like the sound of distant rain. Mainstream fact check: fossilized remains of early amphibians often contain dragonfly wings in their stomachs, proof that even these sky monarchs were prey to creatures from below. But for every meal taken, thousands of dragonflies survived. Their speed, vision, and mastery of the air made them untouchable most of the time, nature's first dominion of height advantage. You push through a curtain of moss and emerge into a slightly drier patch of forest. The ground rises here just a little, and for the first time you feel something resembling a breeze. It carries warmth from the low sun, and with it an odd dryness that makes your throat ache. You kneel beside a pool to take a sip, cupping your hands. The water is earthy and bitter, tinged with minerals. It tastes like time. Something flickers above the reflection. You look up two Meganeura, circling their flight slower now. They're not hunting, they're dancing again maybe, or arguing. Their bodies flash bronze and green as they weave in widening spirals. You can almost imagine the air vibrating with their silent conversation. And then collision. The two insects hit each other, mid-turn wings, clattering like glass on glass. They tumble briefly before separating, both wobbling, slightly dazed. One recovers quickly and shoots upward, disappearing into the sun. The other falls lower, struggling to regain rhythm. It lands near you on a fern, panting if insects can pant. You crouch watching it. Its left wing is torn along one vein, a thin crack that glints in the light. It tries to lift off but fails. The second attempt gets it halfway up before gravity wins again. The forest watches in stillness. No rescue, no sympathy. You want to help, but there's nothing to do. The insect climbs awkwardly up the fern, perching near the tip, as if waiting for some last instruction from instinct. And there it stays, quivering slightly, wings trembling but unable to lift. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind to fill the silence. Scientists once found fossilized dragonflies with healed fractures in their wings, proof that even prehistoric insects could recover from damage if given time. Maybe this one will too, or maybe it won't. Maybe the pond below the amphibian's open mouth, the ants already marching along the branch, all of it is just the next sentence in a sentence that never ends. You whisper quietly, "Fly when you can." The insect doesn't move. The forest hums again. Somewhere another meganeura dives, another amphibian strikes. Balance reasserts itself. You stand feeling the moss cling slightly to your skin. The ground trembles faintly underfoot and you realize it's not the earth. It's thunder far away but coming closer. A storm is building. You can smell it before you can see it, that iron-sweet scent of ozone and sap. The air feels electric, charged with invisible threads of tension. Even the dragonflies shift their patterns, moving lower. Their flight jittery now. Historians or meteorologists masquerading as them believe that with so much oxygen in the air, Carboniferous storms were both frequent and spectacular. Lightning strikes would ignite forest fires that raced across continents, feeding on the planet's over-enthusiastic greenery. The irony isn't lost on you, a world too alive sometimes burns itself just to breathe easier. The first raindrops fall big, heavy, warm. They slap against your arms and hiss on the surface of the ponds. The dragonflies scatter for cover beneath broad fern leaves, their wings folding neatly along their bodies. You do the same, ducking under a trunk hollowed by rot. The air fills with the scent of wet earth and smoke. The rain turns to a downpour within minutes, the sound so loud it feels like applause. You peek out and watch the storm reclaim the sky. The trees sway, shedding sheets of water. Lightning splits the horizon, and for a heartbeat the entire forest flashes white. You see every detail, the veins of leaves, the arcs of wings frozen mid-flight, the startled fish below. Then it's gone again, replaced by rolling thunder that shakes the ground. A single thought crosses your mind. This is what the end of the world must sound like, loud, brilliant, and utterly necessary. You wait until the rain softens. The light shifts once more, dim and grey, filtered through steam rising from the soaked forest floor. The dragonflies begin to emerge again, tentative, shaking droplets from their wings. One by one they return to the air, cautious at first, then confident. Within minutes the sky hums again as if nothing happened. You smile. This is how life survives, not by defying the storm, but by waiting it out. You step out into the clearing, the rain dripping from your hair, and whisper, to no one in particular, "All right, let's fly again." The forest answers with the soft, eternal beat of wings. The world after the storm smells like forgiveness. Everything is rinsed again, polished by rain and thunder until it gleams. The swamp has become a mirror. Each puddle holds an inverted forest, and every leaf drips in time with your heartbeat. You breathe in and it tastes of copper moss and something faintly sweet, like the planet has brewed tea for you using its own roots. Steam rises off the water in soft columns curling between the trunks of scale trees. The sound of rain retreating into the canopy creates a background whisper, 1,000 quiet rivers flowing downward. The only other sound is wings, steady, slow, the Carboniferous version of applause. The dragonflies are back, newly washed, glinting as they reclaim their sky. You step carefully across the soggy ground. The moss gives slightly under your heel, releasing little puffs of air that smell like wet parchment and rot. It's not unpleasant. It's the scent of things turning into fuel, the quiet chemistry of the future. Above the light bends. The air is so saturated it feels like it's glowing from within. You look up and see something unexpected, a rainbow. Not the crisp, modern kind, but a diffuse liquid arch painted in bruised pastels. It stretches from one treetop to another, shimmering faintly in the mist. You grin. Even before mammals, even before flowers, the sky had a flair for showmanship. You're about to keep walking when a sudden movement catches your eye. On a low branch nearby, 2 dragonflies have locked together, legs, wings, and bodies entangled in an acrobatic knot that would baffle a physics professor. They're mating mid-air, forming the unmistakable heart shape that modern dragonflies still perform today. You can't help but laugh softly. Some designs don't need revision. You move a little closer, keeping your distance, but fascinated. The pair drifts lazily through the air, joined at the abdomen, their wings brushing in unison. The male steers, the female folds her wings occasionally, and together they create a kind of floating duet. No music, no speech, just motion as elegant as think that will ever walk on 2 legs. Mainstream fact check, this unique wheel position is a dragonfly tradition older than dinosaurs themselves, a mechanical and evolutionary marvel that ensures efficiency in flight and reproduction. The shape is so iconic that entomologists refer to it simply as the heart, which feels fitting if a bit romantic for insects. You tilt your head, watching the pair drift downward toward the pond's edge. The female releases her grip and begins dipping her abdomen into the water, laying eggs in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Each touch leaves ripples that widen across the surface like sound waves. You can almost hear the hum of life extending itself forward, endlessly forward. Historians or biologists in their poetic moods still argue whether the earliest dragonflies displayed such complex mating behaviors, or if this grace evolved later once stability and flight allowed for mid-air partnerships. But the fossils in their delicate silence suggest continuity. The mechanics were there from the start. The choreography barely changed. You crouch beside the water and catch your reflection blurred by ripples tinted green by light filtered through leaves. For a fleeting moment, your face and the dragonfly's reflection overlap and you feel a strange connection. Both of you travelers in borrowed time, both breathing an atmosphere that isn't really yours. You whisper, "Don't worry, we'll remember you." The insects continue their work undisturbed. A small joke drifts and come out into your mind. If reincarnation were real, coming back as a dragonfly might not be so bad. Eat when you're hungry, fly when you can dance when it rains. The job benefits are excellent. You stand and stretch, feeling the wet air cling to your clothes. The humidity makes every motion slower, heavier, as though time itself resists your movements. You imagine trying to run in this impossible. The world here is designed for patience, not speed, and yet above speed is everything. You watch a Meganeura streak across the clearing, its wings cutting clean lines through the steam. It's chasing something, a smaller insect, maybe a mayfly darting erratically in the panic. The larger predator closes the distance in seconds. There's a flash, a crunch, and then silence. Efficiency measured in elegance. You realize this place never truly rests. The rain cleansed it, but the cycle remains feed, fly, fall, repeat. There's a strange peace in that. You wander deeper into the forest, guided by the faint buzzing that never fades completely. The ground rises slightly again, and you find yourself overlooking a wide marshland glimmering under the post-storm light. Ferns bend under the weight of droplets, and their fronds sway gently, scattering silver beads into the air. From here you can see dozens of Meganeura lifting from the trees, catching the thermals rising from the wet earth. They climb higher and higher until they vanish into the mist. You feel a twinge of awe. These creatures born of swamps and silence are now masters of altitude. You imagine how they see the world from up there, the sprawling forests, the endless rivers, the quiet pulse of a planet that hasn't yet learned to roar. A fringe tidbit for your notebook. Some paleobiologists suggest that dragonflies may have been the first creatures to reach altitudes of several hundred meters, possibly even kilometers during migration. The sky, once a void, was theirs alone. You take a step back, your foot slipping on wet moss. You steady yourself against a trunk, laughing quietly. Careful, you murmur to no one. Gravity's been here longer than you. A shaft of sunlight breaks through the cloud canopy, catching the droplets mid-air. They sparkle briefly, then fall back into shadow. The light makes everything look unreal, dreamlike. You feel as though you're walking through a painting that someone keeps repainting just as you turn away. You glance down and notice a small pool of perfectly still water undisturbed by wind or rain. You crouch beside it. The reflection there is clear, too clear. You see the Meganeura above the trees, even your own silhouette framed by the ancient light. Then, without warning, a small ripple distorts everything. A dragonfly has touched down, barely brushing the surface. The ring of ripples spreads outward, erasing and remaking your reflection again and again, until it's gone. You smile. Maybe that's what history is, one long ripple, endlessly repeating itself in new shapes. You whisper, "Fly," while the air remembers you. And for a moment, as another wave of wings hums overhead, you're sure it does. The air feels heavier today, not just humid, but purposeful, like it's carrying a secret. You can sense it even before the sound returns, that deep resonant buzz that seems to start in your ribs before it reaches your ears. The dragonflies are awake again, and the world holds its breath for their shift to begin. You're standing at the edge of a wide clearing. The swamp stretches before you, shimmering beneath a low ceiling of mist. The trees here are fewer, and the open sky is larger than you remember. It's here in this vast still air that the real spectacle begins. A lone Meganeura glides in from the west, its silhouette cutting across the pale light like a thrown spear. Another joins and another, until the space above you becomes a silent ballet of wings. You watch their slow spirals, the way they turn the air into a canvas of movement. They're hunting again, but not in the frantic way of morning hunger. This is practice or ritual. Each dive, each turn feels like choreography. You can see the precision in the angles, the intention behind each movement, and the smaller insects don't even stand a chance. They're just punctuation marks in the Meganeura's poetry of motion. You can't help but smile. You've started to recognize individuals among them. Or maybe you're just imagining patterns where there are none. One in particular moves differently, its flight steadier, more deliberate, the wing beats deeper and slower. You call it the commander. It seems to dictate the rhythm of the swarm. Mainstream fact-check in modern ecosystems, dragonflies don't form true hierarchies, but they do establish dominance over territory, often patrolling the same air corridors day after day. Fossil evidence of wing wear and injury patterns suggests this behavior may stretch back hundreds of millions of years. In short, even the first flyers had turf wars. The commander loops overhead, its shadow sliding across the ferns. You follow it with your eyes until it disappears into the glare. The forest hums softly. Then something changes. The hum falters, replaced by a deep, vibrating whoosh. You look up. The sky has gone darker, not storm dark, but filtered, as though the clouds above have thickened with dust or ash. The light feels strange, more orange than gold. You tilt your head, trying to locate the source, and then you see its smoke rising in the distance, a lazy column twisting toward the horizon. You squint, heart beating faster. Fire! Again! You take a step forward, the air suddenly sharper, more acrid. The dragonflies feel it too. Their flight patterns shift instantly from fluid dance to erratic motion. The commander dives low, then climbs again as though testing the currents. It's chaos. In slow motion, the hum fractures into overlapping frequencies, a swarm-wide alarm. You know what's happening. You've read about it. The oxygen-rich air that feeds life here also makes the planet terrifyingly flammable. One spark, maybe from lightning, maybe from the friction of falling trees, and the forest becomes a living torch. You take another breath. It's still safe here for now, but the wind carries the taste of burning resin. You can smell the future in its smoke char rebirth. Historians still argue about how catastrophic these fires truly were. Some claim they swept entire continents, reshaping ecosystems overnight. Others believe they were patchy local blazes that their forests quickly recovered from. But the fossil record tells a consistent story, thick layers of charcoal thin as pages preserved in coal seams around the world. Every one of those black lines is a fossilized flame. You feel the temperature rise. The air vibrates more urgently now, dragonflies buzzing past you like anxious sentinels. Some land on nearby reeds' wings trembling. Others flee higher into the sky, perhaps instinctively seeking cleaner air. You wonder how many will survive. A small joke crosses your mind, quiet but sincere. You pick the wrong eon to have delicate wings, my friends. The forest always listening answers with a distant crack of thunder. You start moving again, slowly following the faint breeze that carries the smoke. The ground underfoot feels warmer, the moss steaming slightly. A few ferns are beginning to brown at their tips, curling like paper near a candle flame. It's subtle, but it's happening. You reach a small rise where the trees thin, revealing a panoramic view of the swamp. To the north, a faint orange shimmer flickers along the horizon. You can't hear the fire yet, but you can feel it like an approaching tide of heat. Above you, the Meganeura begin to circle again, rising higher and higher until they vanish into the haze. The commander follows last wings, flashing once before disappearing completely. The sound fades, replaced by a soft hiss as air moves over the steaming earth. You crouch, hand pressed against the damp ground. It's hot, too hot. You pull back quickly. The forest murmurs again, branches shifting, leaves sighing. Everything is preparing, bracing. You take a step back, and then silence. Even the frogs have stopped calling. For a moment it feels like time holds its breath, the air itself tightens. The smoke on the horizon darkens, rolling in like a slow avalanche. Then comes the sound. Not a roar, more like a low, steady growl that you feel before you hear. The fire is moving. You stay where you are, half terrified, half reverent. The scene is horrifying and beautiful at once. The flames will devour everything here, the ferns, the moss, the scale trees, maybe even the dragonflies. And yet somehow you know the forest will return. It always does. You take a step backward into cooler air, the smoke thinning behind you. The dragonflies reappear in the distance, small silhouettes against the orange sky. They move erratically at first, then find rhythm again, flying parallel to the fire line, always near, never caught. A fringe tidbit flickers through your memory. Researchers have discovered that modern dragonflies are drawn to polarized light reflected from surfaces like water. and sometimes disastrously to reflections from glass or fire. Perhaps their ancestors were too. Maybe what looks like courage is just confusion written in light. You stay until the first embers drift past you, glowing softly in the thick air. They land on the wet moss and die immediately, hissing out their brief rebellion. The forest exhales. You realize the fire won't reach you tonight. It will burn elsewhere, another continent, another era, leaving its mark in the rocks. You breathe in deeply. The air tastes of ash, but also renewal. You can almost imagine what comes next, the regrowth. The oxygen slowly recalibrating, the insects adapting. The hum returns, faint but steady. Somewhere above the haze, the dragonflies are still flying. You whisper, "You've survived worse, haven't you?" The forest doesn't answer, but the wings do, soft, steady, unbroken. The fire has passed. You can smell it long before you see it. That bitter-sweet scent of charcoal and rain smoke woven into humidity turns the forest into something solemn, like a cathedral after incense. The swamp is quieter now. Even the insects seem to have lowered their voices, and the air feels newly cautious, as though the planet itself is taking stock of what it's lost. You walk along the edges of the burn. The once emerald ground is coated in soot, soft as velvet beneath your feet. The ferns, those exuberant architects of shade, are gone, reduced to black lace against the earth. Yet between the ashes, tiny green shoots are already pushing through. The world wastes no time rehearsing resurrection. You look up, half expecting the sky to be empty, but it isn't. A single dragonfly glides through the rising mist, its wings backlit by the pale morning sun. You exhale. It feels like proof that flight always finds a way back. Mainstream fact-check carbonized plant remains from the Carboniferous show that after, even the largest wildfires ecosystems recovered in decades, sometimes faster. The dense oxygen-rich atmosphere that made fire inevitable also accelerated regrowth. Life in this era operated like a lung-inhale, burn-exhale bloom. You step carefully through the remains, brushing soot from your hands as you move. Here and there, the blackened outlines of lycopsid trunks lean like broken columns, their interiors still smoking faintly. Each one holds the memory of light. The swamp has become a monument to photosynthesis, a gallery of ghosts. And in that ghostly silence you hear it again, the faint hum of wings. More now. Dozens, maybe hundreds. The survivors have returned. They move slower today, flying low over the ashen pool's wings, shimmering silver against the dark background. You can see them testing the air, dipping close to the surface, inspecting what's left. A few land on damp logs, fanning their wings to dry them. Even here, amid ruin, their grace is intact. You crouch to watch one resting on a reed. Its wings are streaked with soot, edges torn, but the rhythm of its breathing remains steady. It flexes, tries a short jump, and lifts an inch off the reed before settling back down. You find yourself whispering encouragement. Take your time. The creature doesn't need your pity. Within minutes it tries again, and this time it rises cleanly, pushing off the burned reed with a crisp snap of air. It circles once, twice, then joins the others above the blackened canopy. There's something profoundly dignified about it, this small insistence on continuing the ritual of flight even when everything below has changed. You walk farther into the charred forest and the light begins to shift again. The smoke thins, revealing patches of vivid green where moisture still lingers. The surviving plants are small but defiant ferns curling upward, spores drifting like confetti of rebirth. The forest is already rewriting itself. Historians, well, geologists who write poetry on weekends still debate whether these great carboniferous fires helped shape the planet's future oxygen levels. Some argue that frequent burning kept biomass in check, preventing oxygen from rising high enough to turn Earth into a tinderbox. Others claim the fires locked away carbon faster, hastening the long cooling that would eventually end the era. Either way, fire didn't end life, it edited it. You pause at a clearing where the ground dips into a broad basin of water. The reflection there is startling black clouds over a silver surface like ink on glass. You kneel and touch it. The water is warm, saturated with minerals and ash. It feels alive in a strange way, carrying the memory of trees. You can imagine how the next generation of dragonfly nymphs will thrive here, feeding on the nutrients left behind by destruction. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Researchers studying fossilized charcoal sometimes find perfectly preserved insect wing impressions etched into ash and sealed by silt like a signature. Some of those imprints belong to dragonflies' wings spread mid-flight, frozen by the very element they lived above. You glance at the water and wonder if beneath this surface lies another fossil to be, waiting its 300 million year turn to tell this same story. You stand brushing ash from your palms. The heat has faded, replaced by that strange post-fire freshness, the paradoxical smell of new beginnings. The sun filters through thin smoke, painting the sky in muted orange and violet. The dragonflies are still at it, chasing each other lazily, as though fire was just another kind of weather. You realize something you hadn't noticed before: silence here isn't emptiness, it's transition. The noise of survival has its own frequency, lower and slower, woven into the heartbeat of the swamp. You walk toward a patch of unburned forest drawn by the sound of dripping water. There, under the surviving trees, moss still glows green. The air feels cooler. Dragonflies dart in and out of the shade as if patrolling the boundary between death and continuity. One of them hovers near your face, close enough for you to feel the breeze from its wings. Its compound eyes reflect your image multiplied 1,000 times. In each reflection you look smaller, humbler. You murmur, all right, I get it." Resilience lesson received. It hovers a moment longer, then flies off toward the light, vanishing into the soft haze where smoke meets sky. You stay behind, watching its trail until you can't tell whether it's truly gone or just dissolved into brightness. Somewhere deeper in the forest, another dragonfly answers with a faint buzz. The air trembles with continuity, and just like that, the forest begins to hum again, not loudly, not proudly, but persistently. The age of giants continues. The sky, newly washed, fills once more with wings. You exhale slowly, letting your breath mingle with the steam rising from the earth. "Back to work, then," you whisper. The forest nods in agreement. Life never stops drafting new blueprints. The days after the fire are different. The light feels sharper, thinner, as though the air itself has lost a little weight. You can feel it when you breathe less warmth, less softness. Even the dragonflies seem to notice. Their flight patterns have changed: shorter bursts, longer rests. The hum of wings that once filled every corner of the forest is now quieter, scattered. The sky feels hesitant. You stand on a small ridge overlooking the regrowing swamp. What was once an endless green sprawl is now patchwork, a mosaic of new shoots, charred trunks, and shimmering pools where the roots of fallen trees have trapped rainwater. It's beautiful in a quiet, melancholy way, like the earth pausing to catch its breath. The dragonflies return slowly. You spot one hovering near a blackened log, wings glinting bronze in the sun. It lands, stretches, and begins to clean itself, brushing its legs delicately over its face and thorax. You can hear the faint click-click of its movements, mechanical and soothing. Another joins, then another, until 3 of them perch together, glimmering against the soot like living jewels. You find yourself thinking of them less as insects and more as symbols, the first skywalkers of a world just learning what air can do. You wonder if they sense the change, if they can feel the thinning oxygen in the air, the slow recalibration of balance that humans will only measure with instruments eons later. Mainstream fact check near the end of the Carboniferous oxygen levels began to drop, likely due to the burial of massive amounts of organic matter in coal beds. What had once fueled giant insects now became their limitation. As oxygen decreased, the megafauna of the air began to shrink. The age of the giants was already counting down. You take a deep breath, feeling the subtle difference yourself, or maybe just imagining it. The air no longer feels like velvet. It's still thick, still sweet, but it doesn't wrap around you the same way. You can see it in the dragonflies too. Their flight lacks the effortlessness it once had. Still beautiful, but with gravity a little closer to catching up. You follow one as it lifts off from the log and drifts lazily over the pools. It dips low, touching the surface briefly before rising again. The water glows faintly green, full of suspended ash and spores. Beneath the surface you can see life beginning anew, tiny nymphs almost invisible wriggling in the mud. The next generation is already here. The forest may change, but its rhythm doesn't. Historians still argue whether these shifts in oxygen directly caused the decline of the giant insects, or whether it was more complex, a mix of evolving predators, cooler climates, and ecological realignments. The truth, as always, is probably a messy marriage of all 3. But standing here, you can feel it intuitively. The air is less forgiving now. Evolution will have to adjust its wings. You crouch by the pond's edge, brushing your fingers through the blackened soil. It's still warm from the fire, still rich with the memory of everything that grew here. The texture clings to your skin, staining it with a sheen of ancient carbon. You realize that this very material, the ash beneath your nails, will one day become fuel for civilizations that don't yet exist. It's a strange loop, knowing that one day someone will burn the memory of this forest to power light's engines and dreams. You look up again. The dragonflies are circling higher now, testing the limits of the recovering air. You can tell their motions are slower, more deliberate, as though they're working harder for the same lift. You think about how easily balance slips away, how the same air that once gave them dominance now turns fickle. A fringe tidbit surfaces in your mind. Scientists studying insect respiration discovered that modern dragonflies' tracheal systems physically limit how large they can grow in today's atmosphere. There's a literal equation for it: oxygen diffusion versus body volume. The Meganeura didn't go extinct because it failed, but because the sky itself got stingy. You smile grimly. Even paradise has a budget. The sun climbs higher, heat shimmering off the still wet moss. The air hums again, fainter but steady. A few smaller dragonflies flit near you, delicate, colourful, their bodies slimmer than reeds. You realise these might be the first of the new lineage, the smaller heirs to a collapsing empire. Evolution, it seems, is already at work drafting smaller, thriftier models. You stand brushing your hands on your knees. In the distance, the forest sounds are returning: the drip of water, the soft chirp of insects, even the faint croak of amphibians reclaiming their marshes. Life doesn't waste time debating, it just resumes. One of the smaller dragonflies lands on your arm, so light you barely feel it. Its wings shimmer silver, trembling slightly as it steadies itself. You stay still, not daring to move. For a heartbeat, it feels like a message from the past to the future, from survival to adaptation. The insect lifts off again, vanishing into the sunlight, leaving behind a brief flutter of warmth. You follow its path until it disappears against the canopy. The light filtering through the trees turns softer, hazier, and the forest exhales again, this time with a kind of resigned calm. A breeze moves through the leaves, whispering secrets of chemical change of molecules, shifting allegiance. You close your eyes, letting it brush against your face. The air tastes faintly different now, less luxurious, more efficient. You imagine the future breathing through this same atmosphere, reshaped but still alive. Maybe this is what adaptation feels like, not triumph or tragedy, but quiet continuity. You whisper into the empty air, shrink if you must, but don't stop flying. And high above, almost invisible against the late sun, a few thin-winged silhouettes trace their slow, enduring circles. The sound of their flight, no longer thunderous, no longer dominant, has softened to something more intimate, more enduring. It's not the hum of empire anymore, it's the heartbeat of survival. You listen to it fade into the warm wind and think perhaps this is how all great ages end, not with a crash, but with a breath that simply adjusts to what's left. You wake to a stillness so complete it almost hums. The forest has changed again, less swamp, more meadow, as if the land is stretching after a long, smoky sleep. Ferns have regrown smaller and lighter. The great leucopsid trunks stand farther apart now, their canopies no longer sealing off the sun. Light filters through in gentle waves. The air feels thinner too. You can breathe it, but it doesn't cushion your lungs the way it used to. The planet is slowly learning moderation. You take a few careful steps through the damp moss. Beneath your feet the earth sounds different, less sponge, more soil. A thin crust has formed a promise of future continents. The pools still glitter, though catching bits of sky between leaves. You glance into one half, expecting to see another nymph waiting in ambush. You do. It stirs beneath the surface, armoured and ancient, patient as a clock that doesn't count years but transformations. You sit down beside the pond, knees bent, arms on your thighs. You can hear wings again, but not the deep resonant thunder of the giants. This sound is finer, more intricate. When you look up, what you see confirms it's smaller dragonflies, dozens of them flitting like sparks above the water. Their wings are narrower bodies, more streamlined movements, quicker. They hover in clusters, darting, twisting, exploring their reshaped air. The sky has changed, and they've changed with it. Mainstream fact-check the transition from the Carboniferous to the Permian, brought lower oxygen levels, cooling climates, and new species of plants and insects. The age of the giant flyers ended, not with a single extinction event, but with gradual adaptation. Dragonflies didn't vanish, they just shrank to fit a new world. You watch one of them land on a fern frond. It's smaller than your palm, its body sleek and iridescent. It folds its wings neatly above its back, an innovation you recognize as efficiency over extravagance. Its ancestors once ruled the skies through sheer size. This one rules through precision. Evolution's version of downsizing. You chuckle softly. Congratulations on your promotion to middle management. The dragonfly tilts its head as if to acknowledge your sarcasm, then lifts off wings, blurring into near invisibility. You follow its flight, tracing its patterns through the clearing. It's astonishing how fast it moves, almost too fast for your eyes. If the Meganeura was a glider, this one's a jet. The air vibrates gently with their energy. You can hear layers of sound again, the whisper of wings, the faint rustle of new leaves, the distant croak of amphibians evolving into something more adventurous. The chorus feels balanced like an orchestra learning how to play quieter without losing depth. Historians, by which you now mean every creature that has ever studied change, still argue whether smaller always means weaker. The forest, of course, disagrees. It hums with proof that scale and success are different currencies. The giants had ruled by abundance. These new flyers rule by endurance. You lie back on the moss staring up through the canopy. The clouds move lazily, their reflections rippling across the ponds. Every now and then, a dragonfly passes through your field of vision perfectly aligned with the sun, its wings catching the light like glass and shards. You could stay like this for hours, watching the new world practice its breathing. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your mind. In certain fossil beds, scientists have found dragonfly wings preserved beside fern spores, suggesting that when the great forests burned or fell, insects sometimes clung to drifting debris and rode it across vast distances, accidental pilots of early ecological migration. You picture that now, tiny passengers aboard floating logs carried by wind and current, bringing flight to new corners of the globe. The idea makes you smile. You turned shipwrecks into airlines. The forest is quieter than before, but it's not empty. The hum of life has shifted frequency. You can feel it in your bones, an octave higher, quicker, more refined. Evolution has trimmed the excess. What remains is something nimble and deliberate. A breeze rolls through the clearing, stirring spores into the sunlight. The smaller dragonflies chase them playfully, mistaking the drifting particles for prey. For a moment, the air looks like it's full of glitter. The scene feels both familiar and new, a replay of old rhythms in a leaner key. You think of the Meganeura, again those ancient monarchs of the Carboniferous era. Their fossils lie somewhere beneath your feet, now entombed in the same coal seams that will one day fuel factories and streetlights. You close your eyes and imagine the sound of their wings heavier, slower, resonant, like heartbeat drums. Then softly you replace that sound with the lighter hum around you now. The two blend together, ancient and new, fading into one continuous tone. A dragonfly lands on your forearm, its feet so light you barely feel them. It stays there for a while, the warmth of its tiny body mingling with your skin. The wings catch the light, flashing faint blue. You whisper, "You're smaller, but you made it." That's all that matters. It flutters once, twice, then lifts off, joining the others weaving through the fern spires. You follow it with your eyes until it becomes a shimmer of motion, indistinguishable from the sunlight. The forest exhales around you again. You can hear it in the soft creaks of regrowth, in the rustling of spores scattering, in the faint steady pulse of air moving through young trees. The age of giants has ended, but the sky is still full. Maybe this is how balance sounds, not silence, not triumph, just persistence. You stand brushing the moss from your clothes and take one last deep breath of this thinner air. It's still sweet, still alive, and somewhere above, invisible in the glare, the dragonflies continue their endless rehearsal for every flight that will ever exist. You smile and whisper to the wind. The first aviators are still here, just smaller suits, same souls. The wind carries your words upward toward wings that never stopped believing in the sky. The morning after feels oddly clean, almost minimalistic. Gone is the tangled humidity that once wrapped the world like wet cloth. The air now feels lean, alert, pragmatic. When you breathe, you can sense more space between the molecules, as if the planet itself has started practicing restraint. The swamp around you has turned into a mosaic of shallows and young ground, half water, half promise of land. The Carboniferous abundance is quietly folding itself into history. You wade through the shallows until the mud gives way to firmer soil. The soundscape has changed again, less thunder, more punctuation. The new dragonflies don't drone, they tick and hum in smaller bursts. They remind you of violinists warming up between movements, each tuning their wings to the evolving atmosphere. One darts past your ear. It's barely the size of your thumb, but moves with a crisp efficiency that makes the old giants look extravagant. Its wings flicker, strobing sunlight in clean rapid beats. You watch it angle upward, stall and pivot backward, a move the mighty Meganeura could never have managed. Evolution, it seems, traded grandeur for maneuverability. You step onto a rise and look out over the marshland. It's greener now, but the greens are duller, less neon. New kinds of plants dominate seed ferns, and early conifers edging out the sprawling lycopsids. The forest canopy no longer feels infinite. It's fractured, letting more light reach the ground. Shadows have become more intricate. The planet's architecture is slimming down. Mainstream fact-check this shift toward drier, more variable climates marked the slow transition into the Permian. Swamps receded, land diversified. Insects adapted to more niches and flight diversified with them. The reign of oxygen-fed gigantism gave way to specialization. It's not the end of flight, it's the beginning of finesse. A soft breeze brushes your face, carrying dust instead of mist. You lick your lips and taste minerals. The air smells different now, less organic, more geological. The dragonflies seem to like it though. They've become the dominant punctuation of the new landscape, bright strokes across the brown and grey canvas. You find a cluster of them perched on the dried stem of a fallen fern. They sit in perfect stillness, wings half open, catching the early sun. Condensation glitters on their membranes like glass beads. For a moment you imagine them as stained glass saints presiding over a shrine of adaptation. One by one they lift off. Each wing beat clicks audibly in the thin air. You follow them with your eyes until the rising thermals blur them into shimmer. Then from somewhere to your left a different sound, soft scraping. You turn and spot an amphibian half buried in sand blinking its small eyes. Its body is leaner than those you saw before, its limbs stronger, more certain. It's spending more time on land down more. The borders between ecosystems are being redrawn in real time. You squat watching it crawl. Its movements are ungainly but determined. Every push of its feet leaves a clear impression in the damp soil marks that, if luck allows, could fossilize. You realize you're witnessing a negotiation between water and land, one step at a time. Behind it, a dragonfly hovers, low shadow tracking the amphibian like a memory of the world it left behind. Historians, ever the romantics, sometimes call this period the rehearsal for the modern. They picture life nervously adjusting its costume before the curtain rises on reptiles, forests, deserts, and all the drama to come. Standing here, you can see why. The cast is smaller, but the choreography is sharper. You wander onward, passing patches of charred peat now overgrown with short grasses. The colour palette of the world is shifting from emerald to olive, from excess to discipline. Even the sunlight feels filtered differently, less diffused by vapour, more direct. You close your eyes and feel it on your skin, the first hint of the drier ages that will sculpt deserts, dunes, and bones. A quirky tidbit bubbles up from memory. Some paleoclimatologists theorize that the fall in oxygen wasn't entirely natural, that it was driven in part by the burial of vast swamp biomass, which literally pulled O2 out of the air faster than volcanoes could replace it. The planet overcleaned its own atmosphere. You chuckle. Earth invented climate control by accident. You sit on a boulder, letting your feet dangle into a shallow pool. Dragonflies skim the surface, stitching invisible patterns that fade instantly. Their reflections chase them like ghosts. You find yourself counting 1, 2, 3, 7, 9, but lose track as the swarm thickens. They seem smaller each day, but more numerous, as if the sky compensates for lost size with abundance. You look up at the thinning canopy. The sky is no longer a green haze. It's blue, a clear, soft blue you recognize from your own century. For the first time, the horizon feels familiar. The planet is becoming the world you know. It's disorienting and beautiful. A single dragonfly lands on your shoulder. You freeze, afraid to disturb it. Its tiny feet grip the fabric of your shirt, and you can hear the faint buzz of its breathing. You whisper, "You made it through the fire, through the famine, through the air, losing its kindness." The insect tilts its head, unimpressed by sentiment, then launches again, vanishing into sunlight that seems almost human. You lie back, watching dozens of them sketch looping scripts against the sky. Maybe they're not the giants of yesterday, but their persistence feels like prophecy. The first age of air hasn't ended, it's been refined. The code of flight is still being written, one adjustment at a time. The breeze cools further. Somewhere behind you, a fern releases a cloud of spores that drifts upward like incense. You close your eyes and listen to the smaller wings replacing the grand ones. Their collective hum sounds like the quiet ticking of clocks starting to measure time more precisely. You whisper to yourself, every fall is just a smaller kind of rise. And above you, the descendants of the Meganeura draw tiny figure eights across the thinning atmosphere, carrying the same old message: gravity can be negotiated, not defied. The sun has changed its angle again, lower, more focused. The forest feels different under this new geometry of light, not so much a jungle anymore, more a patchwork of drier groves stitched together by threads of shallow streams. The swamps are shrinking. Where once stood endless seas of ferns now lie patches of open soil, glimmering with salt crystals where the water has pulled back. The air once thick with mist now carries the faint rasp of dust. You walk slowly through it, the ground firm beneath your feet. Each step makes a soft crunch, the first whisper of earth remembering dryness. The insects still hum, but their tone is higher now, sharper. It's as if the whole ecosystem has raised its pitch to match the thinner atmosphere. You tilt your head listening. The song of the world has changed key. A dragonfly drifts by smaller again, barely longer than your hand body, slim as a reed, wings so fine they seem drawn in pencil against the light. It hovers near your face for a heartbeat, and you catch the reflection of your own eyes multiplied inside its many-faceted gaze. You smile faintly. You're still here? Of course you are. Mainstream fact check, this gradual desiccation of the Carboniferous world marked a turning point in evolution. As wetlands retreated, species that depended on water, including many giant insects, declined, while those that could thrive in drier air diversified. The dragonfly line survived by efficiency, improved wing control, faster metabolism, less dependency on humidity. They didn't just shrink, they evolved purposefully for persistence. The wind picks up a little, carrying a hint of grit. You can taste the mineral tang on your tongue, iron salt, and something metallic. When you squint into the distance, you see ripples of heat rising off the new open ground. The first dry plains are being born. You climb a low ridge and pause. From up here, the world looks wider. The endless canopy is broken into islands of trees, each surrounded by stretches of moss and sand. Pools of water reflect the sunlight in dazzling flashes, scattered like dropped mirrors. The sky, freed from perpetual vapor, stretches farther than you've ever seen, a soft gradient from amber at the horizon to pale blue overhead. For the first time, the heavens feel immense, almost lonely, but not empty. You catch movement, flickers of light darting across the air. A dozen small dragonflies, their bodies striped and metallic, weaving between the low shrubs. Their flight seems quicker, now more precise. They dart, hover, turn on a whisper. The old gliders are gone, but in their place the world now hosts acrobats. You crouch low to watch them. Each move seems choreographed, every curve a calculation. The wings blur, but you can still follow the logic of their motion, the precision of creatures that no longer rely on luck. The atmosphere has become an instrument, and they are its musicians. A quirky tidbit surfaces from your thoughts. Modern dragonflies have up to 30,000 lenses in their eyes, giving them almost 3-degree vision. Their ancient ancestors likely had similar adaptations, allowing them to navigate the chaos of their shrinking world with impossible grace. No wonder they outlasted everything else that once called this sky home. You sit back, letting the dry wind tug at your hair. The sound it makes as it moves through the young conifers is brittle, papery. The age of steam and mist has passed. Now comes the age of air and bone. In the distance, something glints sunlight, reflecting off water maybe, or the flash of wings. You squint. There's movement above the horizon. More dragonflies, dozens of them. They move together almost in formation, catching thermals that rise from the heated ground. You realize they're migrating, following an invisible highways carved by temperature and wind. Historians still argue whether dragonflies were the first migratory flyers capable of long-distance travel guided by magnetic fields or polarized light. Modern species can cross oceans, perhaps their ancestors once crossed continents. The fossil record hints at distribution patterns too broad to explain otherwise. You like that thought that even before there were maps, there was memory written into wings. The breeze warms again, carrying a low murmur. It's not speech, not exactly, but it has rhythm, a language of wings and air pressure. A conversation the earth holds with its atmosphere. You close your eyes and listen. Somewhere deep inside that sound is a message older than anything with a mouth. You whisper, you've rewritten gravity again, haven't you? A small dragonfly lands on your knee, its wings catching the sunlight like stained glass. You can see every vein, every ridge perfectly etched. Its chest pulses softly as it breathes. It looks impossibly fragile, a creature that should never have survived such upheaval. And yet it sits there calmly, unafraid, as if to remind you that endurance doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums. You stay still. The insect lingers longer than you expect, then takes off, suddenly vanishing into the wind. Its departure leaves a faint warmth behind a ghost of contact. You glance upward and realize that the entire sky is alive, Hundreds of dragonflies, smaller than ever, but faster, tougher, more numerous. The hum is thinner, more precise, but it carries the same rhythm that once shook the swamps. The lineage hasn't ended, it has simply adapted to the new tempo of the planet. You laugh quietly, not from amusement, but from awe. You're like history itself, you murmur, never dying, just changing its costume. The ground below you trembles faintly. Not an earthquake, but a shift in the wind, the Earth's slow tectonic exhale. Dust swirls, rises, catches the light. For a moment, the entire horizon gleams. You imagine this world seen from above, a sky shimmering with the silver wings of survivors. Each one a fragment of the ancient air carrying the memory of a wetter, heavier, louder Earth. The first flyers, now smaller still, commanding the silence. You close your eyes and let the sound fill you, a new kind of lullaby, the dry wind, the fine hum of wings, the faint crackle of sunlight on soil. You could fall asleep like this, and maybe for a moment you do. When you open your eyes, the light has shifted again, softer, dustier, filtered through the colour of dried clay. The air is quieter now, the kind of stillness that hums faintly in your ears, not from but from space. The swamp is long gone. You're standing on the edge of a shallow basin, where once there were ferns, now only cracked mud and low conifers remain. The world is learning aridity. A faint wind moves through the sparse trees, whispering against their scaly bark. The sound isn't lush or musical like it once was. It's skeletal dry, like pages turning. You take a slow breath, tasting dust and pine resin. Somewhere far off, thunder rumbles, but there are no storms here. Just distant memory. You crouch beside a fissure in the earth where a pool used to be. At the bottom, a thin film of water reflects the sky like a half-forgotten secret. You lean closer and see movement, small nymphs, pale and translucent, wriggling slowly in the shallows. They're survivors from another age, smaller now, tougher. Even their gills look scaled down, built for scarcity. You smile. Still here, huh? One of them pauses as if listening. Then it darts forward and disappears beneath the silt. The mud ripples faintly, then settles again. Mainstream fact-check by the late Carboniferous and into the early Permian vast swamps were replaced by drier inland plains. The humidity that once nourished giants fedided, replaced by variable climates and seasonal droughts. Dragonfly nymphs evolved to withstand periods of desiccation, an ancient prototype for survival in extremes. You stand brushing the dust from your palms. The ground feels warm, almost hot in patches. The dragonflies have adapted too. You see them circling low near the remnants of water, their wings finer than spider silk bodies, slender and bright. They dart between the dry reeds, each motion efficient, measured. They've stopped being giants, but they've become engineers. Every beat of their wings seems calculated for economy. They waste nothing, no movement, no breath, no second. You watch one hover over a patch of cracked clay, its shadow faint against the pale surface. It dips its abdomen and touches the ground. You realize what it's doing. It's laying eggs, not in water, but in damp soil. Hope in the absence of certainty. You murmur softly, you're betting on the rain. A gentle irony comes to you. These creatures began as masters of abundance and now thrive on patience. Evolution has turned indulgence into discipline. Historians, paleobiologists specifically still debate whether this adaptation was conscious or purely reactive. Did dragonflies evolve because they learned to survive drought, or because the clumsy ones simply died off faster? Either way, the result is the same efficiency that looks like wisdom. You walk toward a cluster of young conifers, their thin needles shimmering silver in the afternoon light. The ground beneath them is littered with cones, small, rough, primitive. You pick one up. It's sticky with resin, sweet and pungent. The smell feels ancient yet oddly familiar, like the first whiff of a Christmas tree thousands of millennia early. You laugh under your breath. Everything comes around eventually. Above you, the dragonflies circle lazily, keeping low to the treetops. Their wings catch the dimming light, scattering it in fleeting halos. You can see the faint veins within each membrane, the delicate latticework that seems too fragile to belong to a survivor. And yet here they are, outlasting the forest that birthed them. You sit down on a stone, the heat of the sun still radiating from it. The air hums softly, less crowded now, but still alive. You notice a faint flicker of motion at your feet. A dragonfly lands nearby, its legs sinking slightly into the dust. It doesn't move, just sits, wings outstretched, basking. You can see its chest rise and fall in slow rhythm. You speak quietly, not wanting to break the spell. You've traded your empire for endurance. The insect doesn't react. You continue almost to yourself. That's how the strong survive. They learn how to be small. A gust of wind passes, scattering pine needles and dust across the clearing. The dragonfly lifts into the air, effortlessly riding the breeze like a speck of living amber. It joins others, each tracing wide, slow arcs above the plain. The hum of their wings blends with the wind until you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. The sun dips lower, painting the horizon in iron reds and ochres. The light reflects off the dragonfly's wings, turning the air into a field of sparks. You imagine this scene frozen in stone, a future paleontologist discovering a fossilized wing here, and wondering how such beauty ever survives such harshness. A quirky tidbit drifts through your thoughts. Some fossil dragonflies from this era show variations in pigment patterns on their wings, faint stripes, spots and bands. Scientists speculate they might have evolved for camouflage or temperature regulation. You look at the swarm and smile, so even when the world burned, you dressed for the weather. The air cools slightly as twilight creeps in, shadows lengthen and the hum of wings fades to a whisper. The dragonflies begin to land one by one on the branches and stones, settling into stillness. You can almost feel the exhaustion in the air, a long exhale at the end of an age. You remain seated, watching the last glimmers of sunlight catch the tips of their wings. The forest, or what's left of it, holds its breath. Somewhere in the distance, a single amphibian croaks low and uncertain. You think of everything that's happened, the fire, the flood, the shrinking air, the rebirth. Through all of it, these creatures never stopped flying. Their wings adapted, their breath recalibrated, but the act itself, the motion of defying gravity, remained. You whisper to the settling dusk. You never gave up the sky. The last dragonfly hovers for a moment before folding its wings. The hum fades completely, replaced by the faint sigh of wind moving across dry needles. The day ends. The age of giants is gone, but the air remembers. The world is quieter now, quieter in that deep resonant way that makes sound itself feel sacred. The great swamp age has folded into memory. Where there were once oceans of ferns and endless humidity, there are now rolling plains, low forests and rivers that carve through cracked soil like silver scars. The sky feels enormous, an unbroken dome of dusty blue, and the air, though thinner, carries a clarity the ancient mists never had. You walk along a dry riverbed. Each step crunches softly over pebbles that gleam faintly with mica. The wind moves through the canyon in long, patient breaths. A dragonfly glides by at shoulder height, its wings catching the sunlight in flashes of copper and white. Another follows smaller, faster. The hum of their flight echoes faintly between the rocks. You stop and crouch, letting your hand trail across the sediment layers in the cliff face beside you. Each stripe tells a story. Charcoal black lines from fire-grey bands of ash, from volcanic size, rust-red streaks, where rivers once flooded and retreated. The history of the sky and the earth recorded in colour. You wonder how many dragonflies have come and gone between these layers, how many generations folded neatly into stone. Mainstream fact-check by the early Permian atmospheric oxygen had stabilised around levels much lower than during the Carboniferous peak, about half as rich. Many of the ancient lineages that depended on hyperoxygenation faded, replaced by hardier, smaller species. The world didn't collapse, it streamlined. You tilt your head back and watch one of the new dragonflies make a slow, looping climb. It rises, dips, then hovers mid-air before descending again, landing on a sun-warmed rock. Its wings vibrate lightly, not from fatigue, but from thermal balance, a dance of heat and motion. You can almost imagine it thinking, adjusting, calculating the invisible equations of air density and lift. You step closer. It doesn't flee. Its compound eyes glitter darkly, reflecting your silhouette in hundreds of fragments. You whisper, "Do you remember the forests?" Of course it doesn't. But in its body, in its unbroken rhythm of flight, it carries their ghost. The air around you smells faintly metallic. The wind shifts, carrying traces of sulphur and dust. Somewhere to the west, a mountain exhales smoke, a lazy column that rises and disperses. The earth is restless again. You can feel it beneath your feet, subtle vibrations like the planet's pulse ticking under the skin of rock. Historians still argue whether these climatic swings, the drying, the warming, the periodic fires were disasters or catalysts. Some say they thinned the tree canopies and made space for entirely new ecosystems. Others believe they were nature's way of editing, paring down the excess until life could reinvent itself. Either way, the dragonflies persisted. You start walking it again, following the curve of the riverbed until it opens into a broad valley. The horizon shimmers in the heat, the light bending and breaking into mirages. A herd of early amphibians, thick-bodied squat, rests near a pool, their skin cracked like leather. They glance up as you approach, then lumber away with lazy indifference. Overhead, the dragonflies weave between the sparse trees, tracing delicate spirals through the still air. You stop at the edge of the pool. The surface is perfectly still except for the faint concentric ripples made by a hovering dragonfly as it dips its tail toward the water. The reflections are so sharp that for a moment it looks as if there are two worlds, the one above and its mirrored twin below. You dip your hand into the pool and break the illusion. You can feel warmth rising through your fingers, the memory of sunlight trapped in the shallow water. The air tastes faintly of salt and iron. You murmur softly, "You've turned survival into art." The dragonfly circles you once curious, then lands on a blade of grass. Its body trembles lightly as it adjusts its wings. You realize it's not trembling, it's breathing. Each slow expansion of its thorax draws in air, releases it, draws it again. You match its rhythm unconsciously, and for a moment you feel as though you're sharing the same atmosphere, separated only by scale and history. A quirky tidbit comes to mind in modern dragonflies. The veins in their wings act like cooling systems, tiny radiators that help them regulate temperature. It's likely their ancestors pioneered the same design hundreds of millions of years ago. You can almost hear evolution whisper, "Keep it simple. If it works, don't fix it." You smile. You were minimalist before it was cool. The insect flutters upward, gliding effortlessly on a stray thermal. You follow its path until it vanishes into the haze. Another takes its place, then another, and soon the sky hums with dozens of them darting between invisible highways of heat. The air vibrates faintly with their collective persistence. You sit down on the bank, resting your elbows on your knees. The sun is hot on your back, but the breeze carries just enough coolness to keep you still. You can hear the gentle clatter of dragonfly wings colliding mid-air, percussive rhythm that feels almost musical. Somewhere nearby, the ground shifts again, a low tremor that fades as quickly as it began. You think about how this world, for all its harshness, is still gentle in its continuity. Every cycle, fire, flood, drought, rebirth builds towards something quieter, something steadier. And maybe that's the lesson the dragonflies have been teaching all along. Flight isn't about escaping gravity. It's about negotiating with it. You close your eyes and listen. The hum of wings fades into the wind, and the wind fades into your breath. In that soft merging, you realize nothing here truly disappears. It just changes altitude. The evening comes with a light so soft it feels deliberate, like the planet itself has dimmed the lamp. The sun hangs low over the Permian horizon, swollen and red, painting everything in bronze, the trees, the stones, even the wings of the dragonflies, which catch the light and glow as if filled with embers. You watch them skim the air above a ribbon of shallow water, their reflections wobbling across the ripples like living brushstrokes. The air is cooler now, though not by much. You can feel dryness beginning to define the climate, each breeze edged with grit. When you inhale, the scent of pine resin mixes with dust and fading warmth. The earth has become quieter in its colours, fewer greens, more golds and greys. The old swamp symphony has thinned to a quartet of air, heat, wind and wings. You take a slow step forward, shoes sinking slightly into the damp sand. At your feet, the outline of a dragonfly wing lies pressed into the mud, perfect, delicate, every vein visible. You kneel, tracing its contour with a fingertip. The imprint is fragile. A strong breeze could erase it. You feel an odd pang, something between reverence and recognition. A memory waiting to fossilize, you whisper. Mainstream fact check: fossils from this period show smaller but more specialized dragonfly relatives, early Odonatoptera species adapting to reduced oxygen and drier habitats. Their survival marks one of the longest unbroken lineages in Earth's history, over 300 million years of continuous flight. The dragonfly in every form has outlived mountains, oceans, and empires. You sit back on your heels and glance toward the horizon. The sky is a deep rust color, now streaked with violet clouds that look close enough to touch. The dragonflies move slower in the cooling air, hovering low as if reluctant to leave the warmth. You can hear the faint click of their wings when they pass near your ear, a soft percussion that seems almost conversational. One lands beside you on a small stone. His wings quiver in the breeze, refracting the sunset into tiny shards of color. You study it quietly. The patterns on its wings, thin bands, faint dots remind you of stained glass in ancient cathedrals. But this came first. The first art wasn't carved or painted. It flew. You smile and murmur. The oldest stained glass window in the world is your wing. The dragonfly lifts off again, catching the last ray of sunlight as it disappears into the haze. You watch it vanish, feeling the air settle heavier around you. Historians still argue about how such continuity is possible, how one design could persist almost unchanged, while everything else evolved, fell, or was replaced. Some call it evolutionary perfection, a form so efficient that even time couldn't improve it. Others insist it's coincident survival by the sheer adaptability. But you suspect the truth is simpler. The dragonfly never tried to conquer its world. It just learned how to move within it. You stand and stretch, watching the last light fade. The first stars emerge faint pinpricks against the cooling violet of the sky. Night here isn't the kind you know. There are no city lights, no horizon glow. Just infinite dark, pure and ancient. You can hear the whisper of nocturnal life, beginning small rustles in the reeds, the soft croak of something amphibian, the sigh of wind threading through dry needles. The dragonflies don't all sleep. A few remain airborne, gliding slowly above the water, their wings ghostly in the starlight. Their movement feels slower, more deliberate, as though flight itself has turned meditative. You follow one with your eyes until it merges into shadow. A fringe tidbit stirs in your mind. Fossilized dragonflies have been found with mineral residues that suggest iridescence, tiny nanostructures in the wings capable of bending light. Even in death they were luminous. You whisper. You are mirrors before eyes even learn to dream of beauty. You sit on a fallen trunk, feeling the rough texture beneath your palms. The bark flakes away in thin sheets, releasing a faint scent of earth and smoke. The air cools more quickly now, and with it comes that deep calm that only ancient nights know. The kind where time feels slower, like a heavy animal resting beside you. You glance upward again. The stars are brighter now, countless sharp, almost close enough to pluck from the sky. You realize the dragonflies are still up, their faint glimmers in the starlight tracing slow hypnotic loops. Their flight blends with the cosmic stillness so seamlessly that it's hard to tell where the planet ends and the heavens begin. You think of all the worlds that will follow this one, the rise of reptiles, the march of mammals, the brief bright arrogance of humankind. But through all of it, wings like these will keep stitching the air uninterrupted. You close your eyes for a moment, listening. The sound of flight, soft, even eternal, has become almost indistinguishable from your own heartbeat. A small laugh escapes you. You're still the sound of the planet breathing. You sit like that until the stars deepen and the air cools enough to make your skin prickle. When you finally stand, the night is full of movement, wings brushing darkness, faint ripples on the pond, the distant rhythmic whisper of survival. You look around one last time. The forest is smaller, the sky bigger, the air thinner, but the pulse of life remains delicate and unstoppable. And above, a single dragonfly glides past the moon's reflection, its wings catching silver light before vanishing into shadow. You murmur softly. You've traded abundance for eternity. The breeze carries your words, capturing them into the night where they dissolve into the steady hum of wings, the same song still playing across a world learning to rest between breaths. The next dawn breaks quietly like the slow turning of a page. The air feels lighter now, almost fragile, but it carries a freshness that makes you breathe deeper, slower. The forest around you is thinner still, more a scattered gathering of trees than a canopy. Sunlight moves freely here, unfiltered, painting everything in the soft gold of new beginnings. The earth feels older but calmer, like a creature that's finally learned how to pace its own heartbeat. You walk through the tall grasses, their tips crisp and dry, brushing against your legs with a papery whisper. The land stretches flat to the horizon, a vast plain punctuated by low shrubs and pockets of water that shimmer like glass. You can almost feel continents drifting underfoot, the slow rearrangement of everything solid. Above you the sky hums, not loudly but insistently. The dragonflies are already awake, tracing their early morning patrols. They skim over the reeds, wings flashing amber and blue in the sunlight. Smaller now, yes, but more numerous than ever. The air itself seems woven from their movement, each flick of wing a thread in the invisible tapestry of survival. You stop near a pond, shallow, still ringed by reeds that bow gently in the wind. A group of dragonflies hovers above it, their reflections perfect and synchronized, as though rehearsing a dance older than history. They dip and rise in smooth mathematical arcs. You realize they're feeding on tiny midges that rise from the water's surface. Precision predators as elegant as they are relentless. Mainstream fact check. Modern dragonflies still hunt the same way their ancestors did. Eyes scanning in near 360-degree range wings moving independently. Bodies capable of abrupt shifts in direction. Fossil evidence suggests that the efficiency of their hunting style has remained unchanged for over 300 million years. They were perfect early on and time merely kept their rhythm. You crouch beside the water trying to follow one with your eyes. It's almost impossible. The dragonfly zips left, stops mid-air, then shoots upward like a bolt of light. Each move feels deliberate, practiced. You watch it catch a smaller insect mid-flight, the motion too swift to see clearly. By the time you blink, the hunter is hovering again, wings beating so fast they hum in a higher pitch than your ears can quite hold. You can't help but grin. You're still showing off, aren't you? The dragonfly tilts mid-air as though acknowledging the compliment, then vanishes into a column of rising heat. You stay crouched, tracing shapes in the dust with a fingertip. The world here feels unfinished, not chaotic, but transitional. The lush swamps are gone, the age of vast reptiles hasn't yet arrived. This is the quiet interlude between empires, the pause between heartbeats. And yet in this pause, life is busy rehearsing its next act. You glance at the water. Beneath the surface, nymphs crawl through the mud, tiny, armored, purposeful. They move slowly but precisely, each limb deliberate. Their jaws flick out lightning fast, seizing smaller prey. You recognize them immediately, the larval stage of the dragonfly unchanged for eons. They live here for months, sometimes years, before emerging into the sky as adults. Life doesn't rush here. It invests. You smile. You live like a monk and die like an acrobat bat. Historians still argue whether this patience, the slow larval development, was a survival adaptation to harsh climates, or simply a leftover from wetter ages. Either way, it works. The dragonfly's secret has always been timing, knowing when to wait and when to leap. You stand again, the sun already hot on your face. The air shimmers, slightly full of the scent of resin and baked earth. You watch as a group of dragonflies gathers over the water, their bodies catching light in hues of copper and silver. They form loose spirals, chasing each other, colliding, lightly looping again. It's not hunger driving them now, it's courtship continuation. Even here in a world of scarcity, the dance goes on. A quirky tidbit surfaces from memory scientists once filmed dragonflies mating mid-air, still forming that ancient heart-shaped wheel their ancestors perfected in the Carboniferous. It's one of the few acts of flight that hasn't evolved simply because it didn't need to. Love, or its biological equivalent, was already aerodynamic. You chuckle softly, watching the dancers trace infinity symbols above the reeds. You're better at relationships than most of us. The breeze picks up, carrying with it the dry sigh of the changing world. The ground beneath you is beginning to crack in patterns that resemble the veins of a leaf. You crouch again, touching one of the fissures. It's warm. You imagine water retreating farther underground, escaping the growing heat. You imagine the dragonflies following it, their eggs buried in the last damp corners of the soil, waiting for the next rain that might take months or years. Still they wait. The light shifts again, the golden haze turning white with noon. You shade your eyes and look up. Dozens, no hundreds of dragonflies wheel high above you, glittering points against the sky. From a distance they look like sparks, tiny fragments of sunlight that refuse to fall. Historians, poets really once called dragonflies the memory of rain. Watching them now, you understand why. They are living proof that water once ruled this land and that life learned to carry water within its own wings. You take a slow breath, feeling the warm air fill your lungs. The wind carries the faint hum of wings across the valley. It's not loud, not commanding, but it's persistent, steady, eternal. You whisper you're not just survivors, you're continuity. One dragonfly glides past your shoulder close enough for its shadow to brush your cheek. You feel the whisper of its wings like a soft sigh. And in that moment you understand this isn't the end of an age. It's the middle of a sentence that's still being written one word at a time in the language of air. The breeze shifts again, scattering dust and light across the plain. You close your eyes, listening to the hum fade into distance. It doesn't vanish, it just climbs higher out of hearing into the bright infinite sky. You smile. You'll still be up there tomorrow. By the time the sun reaches its height, the heat feels like a presence, thick, watchful, patient. The land stretches out in vast muted shades of beige and bronze, where even the air seems to shimmer with fatigue. The swamp's ghosts are long gone now. No moss, no fog, no chorus of amphibians. Just quiet wind and the endless hum of wings. You walk along a ridge of cracked clay that overlooks a shallow valley. Below, a series of small ponds glint in the sun, the last remnants of a once giant ecosystem reduced to mirrors in the dust. Around each pool, life gathers: low shrubs, crawling insects, a few reptiles moving with deliberate economical motion. The dragonflies dominate it all, their flight paths tracing shimmering lines through the haze. It's strange how elegant they still are, even here in this sparser world. Their wings catch the sunlight like metal foil, bending it into fleeting colours. They hover, dart and dive with the same precision they've always had. But there's something new in their flight now, a kind of restlessness. They cover more ground as though searching for what's already gone. Mainstream fact check: by the mid-Permian period, the world had dried considerably. Continental drift had merged many smaller landmasses into Pangaea, creating massive interior deserts. Air circulation changed, seasons intensified, and wetlands vanished. Dragonflies adapted by becoming stronger flyers, capable of travelling long distances in search of new water sources. In a sense, they became pioneers of migration before migration had a name. You crouch on the ridge, watching a group of them above one of the shrinking pools. The reflection of their wings flickers across the surface like flames, ghosts of the Carboniferous fires, now tamed into something quieter. They hover low, dipping briefly to touch the water with their tails. Eggs, you realise. Still laying them, still trusting that the cycle will continue. You smile faintly. Faith with wings. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of hot stone and distant resin. You can feel the faint vibration of the earth beneath your feet, tiny tremors, subtle but constant. The planet is stretching, changing shape, and the air tastes faintly of iron. The dragonflies seem unbothered. They've seen worse. You start to climb down toward the pool, the clay cracking softly under your boots. When you reach the edge, you kneel and dip your fingers into the water. It's warm, too warm. The surface shivers around your touch, disturbed not just by you, but by something moving below. You look closer and see the nymphs again, smaller now, faster, sleeker. They dart through the mud like living arrows, hunting microscopic prey. One shoots forward, jaws snapping, and you can see the faint puff of sediment rising like smoke. You grin, still ruthless. Historians still debate how much of the dragonfly's evolutionary success lies in its larval stage, the patient hunter beneath the surface. The nymphs are ancient prototypes of focus and precision. They wait, they calculate, and when they strike, it's with unflinching accuracy. Even now, in this drier, harsher world, they embody the same silent resilience. You lean back on your heels, watching as the adults dart overhead. The air trembles faintly with their energy. A single large dragonfly passes low over your head, casting a quick, sharp shadow. You follow its path until it joins a small cluster of others circling higher up. The pattern they form is mesmerizing: loops, crossings, spirals, all perfectly timed. A quirky tidbit drifts through your thoughts. Modern scientists studying dragonfly flight patterns discovered that they use micro-predictive algorithms, tiny adjustments to anticipate turbulence and motion. In other words, they don't just react to the air, they forecast it. You watch the formation above and realize that this intelligence isn't new. It's written in the shape of every wing. You murmur, "You are the first weather prophets." A gust of wind rushes over the ridge, stirring dust into the air. The dragonflies adjust instantly, changing altitude in seamless synchrony. The pond ripples, briefly blurring the reflections. When the dust settles again, you can see them resume their flight as if nothing happened. You glance upward and notice something you hadn't before: a long column of air shimmering in the heat. The dragonflies rise into it one by one like sparks caught in an invisible flame. They spiral upward until they vanish into the brightness. You can't tell if they're chasing cooler air or simply obeying instinct, the ancient pull to rise to see what lies beyond the horizon. You watch them go, shading your eyes. Their absence leaves the valley strangely still, as though the very air has exhaled. The remaining few skim lower, now their hum quieter, their movements slower. The pond glimmers, a thin film of silver light that trembles with each ripple. You can see faint rings spreading outward from the spots where the dragonflies touch down, circles expanding, fading, merging. It hits you then that this is how memory works, not as permanence but as echo. Each act, each wing beat, each dip, each breath sends ripples forward into the next age. Most fade, but some persist, shaping the contours of everything that follows. You whisper, "That's how you survive," not by staying but by repeating. The sun shifts again, sliding lower toward the horizon. The sky turns molten, the land glowing as though lit from beneath. The pond mirrors it all, a sheet of fire beneath a sheet of sky, and in that double light a few dragonflies still move, tracing slow circles in air that hums like a held note. The heat presses against your skin. You close your eyes, breathing deeply, and the air fills your chest with the smell of salt and dust and time. When you open them again, the world feels softer, dimmer, quieter, timeless. The dragonflies have vanished into the distance, leaving only a shimmer where their wings once caught the light. You stay a little longer, listening. The wind returns gentle now, brushing across your face like a sigh. Somewhere beyond sight, the hum continues, fainter, higher, carried on the air to places you'll never reach. You smile. Go on then. Find the next river. The earth beneath you hums once faintly like an answer. The days pass differently now. The air no longer shimmers with humidity but pulses with heat. The once green earth has turned bronze, and the scent of the forest has changed from wet decay to warm resin and dust. You wake to silence, a kind of measured ancient quiet that feels less like emptiness and more like listening. You walk along the cracked basin that used to be a swamp. The ground beneath your feet looks like pottery left too long in the kiln patterns of fissures running in elegant, unpredictable lines. Every now and then a gust of wind stirs sand and fragments of dried reeds into small spinning devils. The world feels sun-baked and simplified, and yet above you life still hums. The dragonflies are here, leaner now, faster. Their wings flash white in the bright sun, each motion so clean it leaves no afterimage. There are fewer than before, but each one moves with a sense of refinement, as though the species stripped of abundance distilled itself down to pure skill. You watch them cut through the air, each glide more efficient than the last. They're no longer the showy giants of the Carboniferous sky. These are the survivors' engineers of balance. Mainstream fact check. As the Permian continued, the global climate grew harsher. Oxygen levels stabilized around modern values, and many of the gigantic arthropods vanished. But the dragonflies persisted by evolving leaner bodies, faster metabolisms, and greater control over flight. Their nervous systems became marvels of precision, each wing beat adjusted by microseconds. You kneel by a shallow depression that once held a pool. At its center, a patch of damp mud remains. The surface is speckled with the faint tracks of insects, small tight spirals, some ending abruptly. You touch the mud with your fingers. It's warm and fine, almost silky. When you lift your hand, the print you leave begins to crumble at the edges. You murmur, even fossils start as whispers. A movement catches your eye. Near the far edge of the basin, a dragonfly hovers low, its reflection flickering in a narrow strip of remaining water. It's smaller than any you've seen so far, no longer than your index finger. It lands on a thin blade of grass, its weight bending the stalk slightly. You move closer slowly and watch it in profile. Its wings quiver, catching light in waves, amber-silver, then nearly invisible. Its body pulses faintly as it breathes. You can almost feel its fragility from here. The air trembles around it. Then without warning it leaps, straight up, perfect vertical ascent. The sound of its wings fills the air for one brief crystalline moment, and then it's gone, vanished into the blinding light above. You blink and laugh softly. You've turned survival into choreography. The wind picks up again, brushing your hair across your forehead. The scent of pine and hot earth fills the air. You glance around, noticing how quiet everything else has become. No frogs, no buzzing swarms, no deep swampy chorus. The world has streamlined just like its creatures. What remains is what endures. Historians, those who read the fossil record as scripture, still argue about this quiet period. Some call it decline, others call it refinement. But standing here with the heat pressing gently against your skin and the faint shimmer of wings above you, realize it's both. The earth isn't dying, it's concentrating. You start walking again, following the wind as it threads through the scattered trees. The trunks of early conifers rise in straight, disciplined lines, their bark rough and pale. Resin beads cling to the cracks like frozen honey. You touch one. It's hardening already. Within it, a single trapped gnat glints in the sunlight, immortalized mid-flight. You smile. You've become time capsules without realizing it. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Fossilized amber often preserves the delicate remains of ancient insects, sometimes even with traces of their pigments. Some of the oldest specimens contain proto-dragonflies' wings still outstretched, as if refusing to land even at the end. You imagine this drop of resin one day becoming such a relic, an echo of motion turned eternal stillness. You pause beneath the shade of one of the conifers. The air here is cooler, flavoured with pine. A soft shadow crosses your face, the brush of a dragonfly's wings passing close. You glance up and catch a glimmer of them, dancing between the shafts of light, filtering through the branches. The scene feels fragile and infinite all at once. You whisper, "You still paint the air, don't you?" The dragonflies hover in small, deliberate patterns. Their movements are slower now, the temperature beginning to drop with the coming evening. Each motion looks considered almost ceremonial, like a rehearsal for continuity. The light softens to gold again. The shadows lengthen. You realize that you've been walking through a story written entirely by motion, one species tracing its survival across a changing canvas. Every adaptation, every wing beat, every decision to rise or rest becomes a part of a greater sentence the planet has been writing for hundreds of millions of years. And yet you know what comes next. The great Permian upheaval looms ahead, the extinction that will rewrite the world entirely. You can almost feel it at the edges of the air, waiting, gathering, dreaming in silence, but not yet. For now, the dragonflies still rule the daylight. Their hum is still steady, their shadows still trace elegant shapes on the dusty ground. They've survived everything the planet could throw at them, so far: fire, flood, famine, and change. If anything, their endurance feels inevitable. You look toward the horizon, where the sky melts into the colour of bronze and lavender. The air flickers faintly with the last movements of the day's swarm. You breathe it in, tasting iron and light. You whisper, "You'll make it through this one too." A single dragonfly glides past your shoulder wings, catching the dying sun. For a heartbeat it glows pure gold. Then it vanishes into the lengthening dusk. The wind falls still, the air cools, the earth holds its breath again, waiting. Night does not fall here, it arrives like a sigh. The heat fades slowly, stretching itself thin over the plains until even the wind forgets its purpose. The sky above you deepens to an impossible gradient, violet melting into blue, then into the faintest trace of black. Stars begin to spark across it, quiet, patient, ancient. You sit on a low rock, its surface still warm from the day. Around you the world feels paused. The insects that remain move softly, whispering instead of buzzing. You can hear the faint drip of the moisture condensing on leaves, the occasional creak of the conifer branches settling as the temperature drops. And then, as your eyes adjust, you see them dragonflies glowing faintly in the starlight. Not from their own light, of course, but from the way their wings catch every glimmer that drifts down. They glide across the open air like reflections of the constellations above, small and steady, as if the stars themselves have descended to trace patterns near the earth. You lean back, smiling. You never stop, do you? Their flight is slower now, but graceful. They move with an ease that doesn't feel like exhaustion, but like trust in the air, the wind, the balance that has never quite failed them. Mainstream fact check: dragonflies are diurnal, but fossil evidence suggests that some prehistoric species may have flown at dawn and dusk, those transitional hours when predators rested and the air was cool enough to conserve energy. The lineage has always known how to time its moments wisely. You glance toward the horizon. A faint silver line gleams there, the last trace of a river winding through the valley. The water reflects the first stars like liquid metal. For a moment you can't tell which is sky and which is earth. You realize the dragonflies probably can't either. You stand stretching, your shadow folds against the rock. The breeze is cool now, carrying hints of mineral and pine, the ghost of earlier centuries when the world smelled of rain instead of dust. You take a slow step toward the water. The ground crunches softly under your feet, dry but not dead. You can see the faint glow of dew gathering on low shrubs, tiny droplets forming some mirrors of their own. A dragonfly passes close, brushing your shoulder. You feel its wings whisper against your skin, a touch so light it's almost imagined. You whisper back, "Still checking on me, huh?" The insect hovers for a heartbeat, then turns upward and disappears into the starlit air. Historians, philosophers disguised as paleontologists often say that the dragonfly's story is the story of adaptation made holy. Not progress, not domination, but persistence. They survived not by changing the world, but by changing just enough to live within it. The world shifted around them like a restless dream, and they simply kept flying through it. You kneel by the edge of the river. The surface glows softly with reflected stars. You can see tiny ripples, something moving just beneath, perhaps a nymph, perhaps only the current. The reflection wavers and you realize how much the night sky and the water resemble each other, both infinite, both restless, both full of unseen life. You cup your hands, scoop a little water and drink. It's cool, metallic, faintly bitter. You close your eyes and imagine the oxygen dissolving in it. The same oxygen that once fed forests and giants, now rationed carefully, more selective in its generosity. The air feels thin but clean, and you can still breathe it. So can they. A small flutter draws your attention, a dragonfly landing on a rock nearby. Its wings shimmer faintly under the starlight like veins of crystal. It's still now utterly still, its legs folded neatly beneath it. You sit quietly beside it, unwilling to disturb the calm. The two of you share the same space, the same silence, the same fragile breath. You can feel time slowing. A quirky tidbit crosses your mind. Modern dragonflies can slow their metabolism dramatically, at cooler temperatures entering a kind of suspended state. Fossilized specimens show evidence of similar structures in their ancient relatives, proof that even in the Permian chill these creatures knew how to rest without surrender. You whisper. The art of endurance is just knowing when to pause. The insect doesn't move. You can hear the faint pulse of the river, the soft hiss of the wind, the low hum of the earth cooling. Somewhere in the distance a new breeze stirs dust, carrying with it the scent of resin and stars. You lean back on your hands, watching the sky. The Milky Way is visible now, a river of light flowing through darkness. You can almost imagine the dragonflies above you joining that celestial current, wings scattering starlight instead of sunlight. It hits you suddenly that everything alive right now, the trees, the air, the insects, even you, is suspended between two eternities, the age that came before and the one that waits after. The dragonflies have lived through both edges of that spectrum and still find space to fly in between. You breathe out slowly, feeling the air leave your lungs in a soft tremor. You must think of us the way we think of stars, distant, brief, flickering things. A ripple moves across the river. The dragonfly lifts off from the stone wings, catching the moonlight like blades of glass. It hovers, once then ascends, tracing a slow spiral toward the sky. You follow it with your eyes until it becomes a point of light indistinguishable from the constellations. The breeze sighs again, cool and slow. The ground hums faintly as if the earth itself is purring in sleep. You realize the night here is not absence. It's renewal, the long inhale before creation begins again. And somewhere above, the dragonflies keep watch over it, quiet as guardians of breath. You whisper one last time, keep the air moving. The wings answer, barely audible, like the turning of a page in the dark. The sun rises slow and deliberate, a molten coin lifting itself through haze. You feel its warmth long before it clears the horizon. Dew has gathered again on the sparse reeds, shining like fragments of glass, but it evaporates almost as soon as the light touches it. The world seems to shimmer with fatigue and resilience at once, cracked but unbroken, faded but awake. You're sitting by the same river you found last night, though it's smaller now, more a silver thread than a flow. The dragonflies are already here, restless in the early air. They've survived another night, and their wings catch the new sunlight as if absorbing it directly into memory. They hover low at first near the water's edge, warming themselves. Then one by one they rise, testing the thermals, adjusting to the world's new temperature. The hum begins again, faint and familiar, like a song that never fully stops playing. You take a slow breath. The air smells of stone dust, pine sap, and a faint metallic tang, the earth's chemistry changing beneath your feet. The soundscape is sparse now, no croaking, no rustling fronds, just wind and wings. The silence feels earned. Mainstream fact-check by the late Permian, the continents had fused into Pangaea, and vast interior deserts dominated the land. Global temperatures rose, oxygen levels dipped, and ecosystems thinned. Yet the lineage of the dragonfly, by then highly refined, survived through microhabitats, shaded pools, sheltered canyons, any place water lingered. They became nomads of moisture. You rise and walk along the bank, your shadow long and sharp in the morning light. The river twists around outcrops of rock, disappearing into a canyon where sunlight pours down like molten glass. Along the way, you see flashes of movement, dragonflies darting between shadows, wings flickering golden blue. Each one seems to navigate the currents with impossible grace, unbothered by scarcity. You pause beside a pool no wider than your arm span. The surface trembles faintly under the touch of wind. Beneath it, small nymphs crawl through sediment, moving with ancient precision. You watch one seize a smaller insect that strikes so quick it's nearly invisible. The pattern hasn't changed in millions of years. You crouch and murmur. You're still the quiet assassins of time. A larger dragonfly lands nearby, its body shimmering like copper wire in the sunlight. It flexes its wings slowly as if testing each joint. You notice how the veins form intricate lattices, the geometry perfect down to the micron. Every structure has purpose, strength, aerodynamics, resilience. Nature's engineering at its peak. Historians still argue whether flight itself emerged first as escape or as curiosity. Did wings evolve to flee or to explore? Looking at the dragonfly, you suspect it's both. Their existence feels like equal parts defense and wonder. You stand again, brushing dust from your hands. The air vibrates faintly with motion, an orchestra conducted by the wind. Dozens of dragonflies sweep overhead, their paths intersecting and separating with mathematical precision. They rise higher, forming a swirling column that climbs toward the light. You shade your eyes and watch them vanish into the bright sky. It strikes you how familiar this pattern feels, the migration of survivors, the instinct to ascend when the ground begins to fail. You think of it as a rehearsal for all that will follow the birds, the mammals, even us. Flight isn't about wings. It's about refusing to stay still. You smile. You started the revolution without knowing it. The air grows hotter, the kind of heat that hums rather than burns. The ground begins to shimmer in the distance, the horizon folding in on itself like liquid. You take shelter under the sparse shade of a conifer, its needle casting thin stripes of shadow across your arms. The trunk oozes a drop of resin gold and translucent, catching a tiny insect mid-crawl. Another time capsule, another moment already halfway to eternity. A quirky tidbit surfaces: scientists once found a fossilized dragonfly wing in Permian rock layers that retained microscopic traces of pigment. The color a faint metallic green similar to modern species. It means that even at the edge of extinction they shimmered. You glance at the nearest dragonfly and whisper, you insisted on beauty even when the world was running out of color. You close your eyes and listen. The hum continues, soothing, hypnotic, a steady reminder of continuity. Somewhere far away a low rumble rolls through the ground, maybe thunder, maybe tectonic movement. The planet itself adjusting its posture. The dragonflies don't flinch. The afternoon deepens. Heat radiates from the stones like breath. You follow the river upstream until it narrows into nothing, just a memory of motion carved into rock. The wind has picked up dust again, coating the air in a faint golden haze. Through it, the dragonflies look like sparks drifting through a forge. You stop to rest, wiping your forehead. The sweat dries almost instantly. Overhead, a single dragonfly hovers motionless, balancing on invisible air. Its wings flicker faster than your eye can track. For a moment, it looks suspended in time. Perfect stillness made of infinite motion. You whisper softly, "That's how you've always done it, isn't it?" It. Moving so precisely that stillness and speed become the same thing, it tilts, catches the light one last time, and then darts forward into the glare. The hum fades with it, dissolving into the wind. You close your eyes and take another slow breath. The heat presses against you, but the air tastes like sunlight, clean, final, alive. The dragonflies have survived another day, another age, another shift in the script of the earth, and you realize something quietly profound. They were never meant to be rulers of the sky, they were meant to be its memory. You whisper, you don't conquer the air, you remind it how to move. A faint wind stirs, carrying your words away across the shimmering horizon, where the light of the dying sun meets the slow rise of another night. The hum begins again, fainter now, but still steady as the dragonflies trace their ancient geometry through a world learning how to breathe less, but live longer. The air the next morning feels thinner, almost brittle like a fabric stretched too tight. The sunlight is harder now, sharp white, unfiltered, and the shadows it casts are long and lean like ribs across the earth. You can sense that something in the world is shifting again. The rhythm is the same, but the tone has changed. You walk across the dry plain, the cracked surface crunching beneath your feet. The smell of resin and dust fills the air, mixed with a faint metallic scent that hints at faraway volcanoes. The planet is restless again, its crust expanding, exhaling, adjusting under pressures too deep to imagine. Above you, a handful of dragonflies drift lazily on the morning air. Their wings flash briefly when they turn thin sheets of glass scattering light. They move differently now, less playful, more deliberate, as though the weight of survival has refined them into quiet mathematicians of flight. You stop and watch one hover near a dried-out branch. Its body vibrates softly, wings beating faster than thought. It's smaller than its ancestors, lighter, more precise, a perfect piece of aerial architecture. You murmur you've traded size for immortality. Mainstream fact-check as the Permian droughts intensified ecosystems contracted. The massive Meganeura and its kin had long vanished, replaced by smaller, highly efficient species. While most large arthropods perished, dragonflies adapted their physiology: denser flight muscles, stronger thoraxes, more efficient respiration. Miniaturization saved them. You kneel beside a patch of mud where the last trickle of a stream still glistens faintly. You can see movement beneath the surface, tiny larval shadows wriggling in slow rhythm. Even here at the edge of habitability, the next generation is waiting. The dragonfly has learned to make do with the smallest fragments of water. You whisper, "You'll find a way, won't you?" Historians still argue whether adaptability is intelligence or instinct. Did creatures like these decide to change, or did the Earth simply erase everything that couldn't? You suspect both. Evolution, after all, is a dialogue. The planet speaks and life answers. You stand brushing dirt from your palms. The air is very still now. You can hear your own heartbeat, the faint crack of the earth cooling and the far-off hiss of wind moving through canyons. The world feels like a kiln again, reshaping itself for whatever comes next. You take a few slow steps forward and spot something unusual, a cluster of dragonflies moving together in a coordinated arc. They aren't chasing prey or mates. They're migrating. The entire group moves as one body, their flight paths synchronized with invisible precision. They head toward the horizon where a thin line of green marks the faint promise of water. You shade your eyes and watch until they vanish into the glare. The hum they leave behind lingers faintly, a whisper of persistence. You smile. You figured out travel before wheels existed. A quirky tidbit stirs in your thoughts. Modern dragonflies, such as the globe skimmer Pantala flavescens, can migrate thousands of miles across oceans guided by the Earth's magnetic fields and wind patterns. Scientists believe this behavior began millions of years earlier, perhaps even now in this Permian desolation. Migration was their answer to change. The wind picks up suddenly dry and electric. You taste the charge on your tongue before you see the sky shift. Dust rises on the horizon, storms forming where heat and wind collide. The air crackles faintly, and a low roll of thunder shivers through the distance. You watch the approaching haze. The storm isn't rain-bearing, it's a dust storm, the kind that scours rather than nourishes. Yet even this the dragonflies can navigate. You can see a few stragglers darting into the wind, their wings flexing with perfect control. They adjust angle and speed, finding microcurrents invisible to you. You murmur, you read the air like scripture. The storm crawls closer, the light turning copper. You crouch low behind a rock as the wind hits dry, fierce, relentless. Dust swirls around you, filling the air with a sound like the hiss of 1,000 wings. The dragonflies ride it with uncanny ease, vanishing into the storm as though it were just another part of their domain. When the gusts finally subside, the world looks changed again. The horizon is blurred, the air thick with fine sand. The trees you passed earlier are coated in ochre dust. The stream has vanished completely, absorbed into the thirsty ground. And yet when the air settles, you hear it again. The faint, steady hum. You look up. A single dragonfly emerges from the haze wings, tattered but intact. It hovers near your shoulder, its body glinting like tarnished copper. For a moment you meet its eyes, those endless mosaics of reflection. It feels less like being watched and more like being acknowledged. You whisper, "You made it through." The insect drifts upward again, its flight a little uneven now, but determined. It rises into the brightness, disappears into the heat shimmer, and leaves behind a silence that feels strangely full. You sit there for a while, the wind brushing against your hair, the ground still warm beneath your palms. You think about how every storm, every drought, every change the earth has endured has been answered not with defiance but with motion. The dragonfly has never tried to stop the wind. It just learned how to ride it. You close your eyes and listen. The air hums faintly, half memory, half heartbeat. You smile. You're not just survivors, you're improvisers. The world exhales again, long, low, steady. The dust settles, and the horizon stretches out endless and glowing, waiting for whatever comes next. And somewhere out there in the thinning air, wings still beat. The horizon has changed again. You notice it first in the colour of the light, less gold, now more silver, like sunlight filtered through a thin veil of ash. The heat still presses on you, but it feels different, drier, more brittle, a warning in disguise. The air itself tastes faintly of minerals and smoke. Somewhere beyond sight, something enormous has shifted. You walk across a wide plain, the ground a mosaic of fractured clay and scattered stone. The wind here moves low, whispering in small spirals that gather dust but never quite rise. Even the sky looks uncertain, pale at the edges, thick and hazy in the middle, as though the planet is holding its breath. And yet, as always, there's movement. Dragonflies shimmer in the light, their wings bright but subdued, more muted than before. They fly close to the surface now, hugging the air currents that skim along the ground. You watch them weave between cracks and stones with effortless precision, adjusting every wing beat to match the rhythm of the shifting wind. You smile faintly. You've learned to live closer to the Earth. Mainstream fact check toward the end of the Permian massive volcanic activity, what modern scientists call the Siberian traps, began releasing vast amounts of carbon dioxide and sulfur into the atmosphere. The resulting greenhouse effect destabilized ecosystems worldwide. Yet fossil evidence shows dragonflies persisted through much of this chaos, retreating into smaller habitats where microclimates still supported life. You crouch beside a patch of scorched vegetation, small brittle ferns turning to ash under the sun. In the grey dust nearby, you find the faint imprint of a wing-thin veins branching out like lightning, frozen in stone. You brush it, gently tracing the pattern with your fingertip. It crumbles at your touch, vanishing back into the earth. You exhale slowly. You always leave just enough of yourself to remind us you are here. The air hums again, low and distant. You glance up to see a group of dragonflies gliding in unison, following the faint shimmer of a heat current. Their movement is smooth, deliberate, hypnotic. You follow their path with your eyes until they fade into the haze swallowed by light. Historians still argue whether insect flight patterns changed significantly during the Permian extinction. Some claim there was a collapse in aerial biodiversity. Others insist the survivors simply became invisible to fossilization. Too small, too scattered too fast to leave evidence. You like the latter theory better. It feels truer somehow, the idea that survival sometimes means becoming harder to find. You take a few steps farther into the open plain. The silence is enormous now, so vast it seems to press against your skin. Even your breathing sounds too loud. The dragonflies nearby move more quietly than ever, their wings barely audible. It's as if they've tuned themselves to match the world's hush. A breeze passes, carrying fine dust that glitters faintly in the sunlight. You can taste the metallic tang again, iron and sulfur, the breath of volcanoes from continents away. The air feels warmer, heavier. You know what's coming. The extinction has already begun. But the dragonflies don't seem afraid. They fly as they always have, tracing the same loops, the same patient geometry. You realize then that they have no concept of apocalypse, only continuity. To them, this isn't an ending. It's weather. You sit down on a smooth rock, the heat seeping into your bones. The world feels both immense and intimate now. The air is thin, but not empty. You can hear the faint drumming of your heartbeat, and beneath it the softer rhythm of wings moving through space. You look up. A single dragonfly hovers above you, suspended perfectly still. The sunlight filters through its wings, turning them into faint stained glass, green gold translucent. Its shadow dances lightly across your face. You whisper, "You look like a fragment of time." The insect tilts slightly, adjusting to a passing breeze, then shoots forward and disappears into the shimmer. Its hum lingers in your ears, echoing long after it's gone. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your thoughts. Some modern species of dragonflies, when faced with drought, delay emergence for years, waiting for the right conditions to take flight. Scientists call it diapause, a biological pause button. It's entirely possible that ancient dragonflies did the same, surviving not by endurance alone, but by patience, sleeping through extinction until the world was kind again. You close your eyes. Even time respects the ones who know how to wait. The wind shifts again, bringing with it a distant sound, low, steady and growing. You open your eyes and see it, a faint red haze gathering on the horizon. Volcanic ash. The sunlight dims as it spreads, turning the sky from silver to rust. The day feels shorter, the air thicker. Still, the dragonflies move through its silhouettes, flickering against the glowing clouds. They look like embers carried by an invisible breath. You watch transfixed as they vanish one by one into the haze, their paths intersecting and diverging in perfect silence. The earth trembles faintly beneath you, barely perceptible, but enough to rattle a small pebble at your feet. You pick it up, roll it between your fingers, and then let it fall. The dust rises in a tiny cloud before settling again. The dragonflies return, skimming low across the plain, their wings coated in fine ash that turns them ghostly. You stand and whisper to the air, "You'll outlast this too, won't you?" No answer, only the whisper of wings. You tilt your face toward the fading light, eyes half closed. The air smells of stone fire and endings, yet somewhere in that scent, faint but real, is something else, the clean trace of water deep underground waiting. You know they'll find it. They always do. The world is dim now. The sun still rises, but its light feels filtered through smoke and distance, as if even daylight has grown tired. The sky has lost its brightness. It glows faintly red, but a bruise that never heals. The air is heavy, thick with ash and dust. You can feel it cling to your skin, taste it in every breath, a reminder that something immense and unseen is burning far beyond the horizon. You walk slowly through what used to be a valley of water. The ground beneath you is blackened, brittle, fractured. The only movement comes from the wind dragging long trails of dust across the plain like ghost rivers. Every few steps you hear faint cracks, tiny echoes of the planet's own exhaustion. And then, against all logic, there's motion. A dragonfly drifts by, slow but certain, its wings grey with ash. It hovers near your shoulder for a moment before darting away. You follow it with your eyes, and soon you see others, faint shapes weaving through the haze, tracing loops that shimmer faintly in the dying light. Even here, even now, they still fly. You murmur softly. You're the punctuation marks in the silence. Mainstream fact check: the Permian extinction. The Great Dying erased more than 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial life. Oxygen levels plummeted, temperatures spiked, and volcanic gases poisoned the atmosphere. Yet fossil evidence suggests some insect lineages, including dragonflies, managed to survive through microclimates, finding oxygen-rich refuges among fragmented ecosystems. You stop near a fissure in the rock where faint warmth seeps upward. When you crouch down, you can feel it radiating from deep below, volcanic heat bleeding through the crust. The ground hums quietly alive beneath its scars. A few ferns cling stubbornly to the cracks, their fronds pale, but still unfolding. Among them a dragonfly lands. Its wings look tattered, like thin parchment scorched at the edges. But when it shifts, you see a glint of colour, still there, still defiant. You whisper, "You kept the blueprint, didn't you?" Historians still argue whether this persistence was luck or design. How did so fragile a creature outlast monsters and forests, oceans and empires? Maybe the secret lies in simplicity. The dragonfly never built, never hoarded, never waged wars with the earth. It just flew. And sometimes flight itself is resistance. The wind rises suddenly, carrying ash in thick, swirling ribbons. The dragonfly lifts off again, vanishing into the haze. You shield your eyes as the air darkens. When it clears, the world feels smaller, less like a landscape and more like a memory being erased. You take a step forward, then another. The silence deepens. Even the hum of wings is gone for a while. You start to wonder if this might finally be the end of them, of everything. Then a faint glimmer catches your eye. A single patch of water half hidden under a ridge of dark rock. You move closer, your footsteps muffled in the ash. The pool is shallow but clear. Around its edge, delicate reeds tremble in the faint breeze. And above it, yes, there they are. Dragonflies. A dozen, maybe more. Their wings catch what little light remains and scatter it into fleeting prisms. You kneel by the pool and watch them. Their movements are slow, careful, as if they know how rare this place is. One lands on your sleeve. You can feel the faint vibration of its wings cooling the delicate pulse of its life. It doesn't flee. It just rests there, silent and small, as if it trusts you. You whisper, "So this is where you hid." A quirky tidbit floats through your thoughts. Some scientists believe dragonflies can detect polarized light, allowing them to find hidden water sources invisible to the naked eye. That means even in a dying world they could locate the last remnants of survival. You watch them move and it feels like proof. You dip your fingers into the pool. The water is cold, shockingly clean. Beneath the surface you glimpse movement larvae wriggling through silt. The next generation already waiting. You exhale softly. You didn't just survive the end. You prepared for the beginning. The air above the pool hums again as the dragonflies rise and fall, their reflections flickering across the surface. Each motion looks choreographed, purposeful, even sacred. In this tiny oasis, surrounded by death, life still rehearses itself. You sit back, resting on your heels, and look around. The plain stretches endlessly in every direction, grey and quiet. The volcanoes still burn in the far distance, faint red columns against the dim horizon. The air smells of iron and smoke. But here in this small patch of light, the world still remembers what it means to breathe. Historians will one day call this the reset, the purification, the long exhale between eras. But standing here, it doesn't feel like cleansing. It feels like endurance written in miniature, a handful of wings refusing to fold. You watch as one dragonfly lands on a reed and tilts its body toward the sun, letting the warmth touch its fragile frame. The gesture feels almost human. A stretch, a prayer, a quiet acknowledgement that life continues even if no one is watching. You smile, you're the last light of the first world. The air stills again, the hum softens. The dragonflies settle for the night, their wings folded, their tiny bodies outlined against the fading red sky. The pool reflects both fire and stars, the dying and the eternal touching without blending. You sit beside it until the darkness deepens, the warmth fades, and the planet falls into its long trembling sleep. Morning comes without fanfare. No birdsong, no chorus of frogs, just the steady creak of the earth cooling after another long, feverish night. The sky is a thin, grey veil, the sun a pale smear behind it. You wake with dust in your mouth and the faint scent of sulphur in the air. But there's motion again, always motion. A faint hum stirs near the pool. You lift your head, squinting into the soft light, and there, they are tiny flashes of movement over the water. Dragonflies, fewer now, smaller than ever, their wings faintly transparent against the dull sky. But still they fly, tracing small loops and circles as if sketching the outline of persistence itself. You watch one hover just above the surface, its reflection rippling faintly. You whisper, "You're still here." It's hard to tell whether it hears you, but it seems to pause for the briefest moment before darting away. Mainstream fact check: after the Permian cataclysm, the Triassic dawned on a changed planet. Forests regrew slowly. Air cleared. Surviving lineages adapted. Among them were the ancestors of modern dragonflies. Them are faster perfected by pressure. They had outlived the Great Dying and would now glide into a new world where reptiles would rule, and yet they too would endure. You rise to your feet, brushing the ash from your hands. The world feels lighter this morning, less suffocating. The horizon glows faintly gold where sunlight breaks through thinning clouds. You can see new plants, low shrubs, and strange cycads dotting the landscape. The colour green is returning, cautious but real. You take a few steps toward the edge of the pool. The water still gleams like glass, but now along its rim there are faint tendrils of moss, hints of renewal. You crouch and watch as a nymph climbs a reed. Its tiny claws grip the stem, pulling its small body up inch by inch. You hold your breath. The air feels sacred in its stillness. And then it begins. The outer shell splits. A wet, glistening form unfolds from within pale wings, pressed flat against a trembling back. The creature pauses, motionless as though uncertain of its new shape. Then slowly the wings expand, stretching out like soft parchment, catching its first breath of wind. You smile. The oldest magic still works. Historians still argue about what defines a beginning. Some say it's the first breath, others the first motion, others still the first moment of choice. Watching the dragonfly's transformation, you realize it doesn't matter. Every emergence is a beginning, no matter how many endings preceded it. The young dragonfly clings to the reed as its wings harden in the cool air. Tiny beads of water slide down its translucent surface. When it finally lets go, it doesn't soar, it tests. A short hop, then a hover, then another short hop. Its movements are tentative, uncertain, but growing bolder with each beat. You whisper you've been reborn into a quieter world. The hum begins to build again, faint but steady. You glance upward and see more dragonflies emerging from the reeds, their wings catching the light in slow, rhythmic flashes. The air fills with the delicate music of flight, thin, bright and determined. A quirky tidbit crosses your mind. Modern dragonflies emerge from their aquatic shells at dawn, the exact moment when light first touches the horizon. Scientists say it's for protection from predators, but you can't help thinking it's ritual, an ancient act of synchrony between earth, water and sky. You sit by the pool watching the dance. The air feels cleaner now. Even the scent of sulphur has thinned, replaced by something softer, wet stone, fresh growth, the faint sweetness of reborn algae. The planet, after all its burning, is learning how to breathe again. You rest your chin on your knees. Around you the dragonflies rise in gentle spirals. They move differently now, less frantic, more exploratory. You can almost hear curiosity in their flight, the first cautious joy of creatures who have survived the unimaginable and still remember how to play. You murmur, "You're the poets of air writing in movement instead of words." The wind shifts, carrying warmth across the plain. Light spills between the clouds, catching the dragonflies mid-flight. For a heartbeat, the sky looks alive again, every flicker of wing a spark of renewal. Historians, those future dreamers who will one day dig through stone, will find traces of this moment. Fossilized wings pressed into rock, frozen mid-beat. They'll write papers about atmospheric recovery, about ecological resilience, about the return of balance. But none of them will know the quiet of this morning, the hum, the stillness, the grace. The way a creature no bigger than your hand could carry the memory of an entire age on its back. You stand taking one last look at the pool. The nymph shells cling to the reeds like small empty ghosts. Above them, their living heirs circle in widening spirals, rising higher into the clearing sky. The world hums with the first fragile rhythm of the next era. You whisper, "You won't rule this world, but you'll outlive it." And as if in answer, one dragonfly lands on your wrist, resting its wings against your skin. You can feel its warmth, its pulse, its fragility. It stays there for a moment, perfectly still. Then as softly as it came, it lifts away, spiraling upward into light that's no longer red or grey, but the clean blue of recovery. The silence it leaves behind isn't emptiness, it's peace. The air feels different now, thinner but gentler, as if the planet itself has unclenched. The worst is over. The skies are pale and clear, and the light has changed from metallic to soft gold. When you breathe in, it no longer tastes like iron or ash. It tastes like air. Real living air. You walk along the edge of a shallow river. Water is returning to the world, slowly tracing old paths like a painter restoring an erased mural. The river glitters where it bends around small rocks, the sound of trickling water, the first true melody you've heard in what feels like ages. You stop and listen, it's the sound of recovery. And above it, as always, comes the hum. Dragonflies. Dozens of them skimming the surface, rising, darting, diving. Some hover inches from the water, others soar high enough to catch the sunlight and scatter it back down in flashes of colour. Their wings are cleaner now, the ash gone. They seem lighter, freer, as though the very act of flight has rediscovered its joy. You smile. You made it. Mainstream fact-check after the Great Dying the Triassic period ushered in a world of renewal. New forests, new rivers, new oxygen. Species radiated outward from the few survivors that had endured. Among the earliest to reclaim the skies were the dragonflies, the quiet veterans of a broken planet. You crouch near the water's edge, watching a young dragonfly land on a reed. Its body gleams a faint copper green. The wings tremble faintly, then still. You can see every vein, every filament, delicate, perfect, a blueprint repeated across 500 million years. You whisper you never forgot how. The world around you feels freshly written. Ferns unfurl from the soil, small amphibians crawl from the water, and even the trees seem to breathe deeper. The air is rich with moisture, again thick but kind. Every gust carries a hint of life, a whisper of pollen, a murmur of renewal. You follow the river upstream, tracing its silver curve through the brightening landscape. Dragonflies guide you like lanterns flickering ahead of you, always just far enough to keep you walking. The sun warms your face. The hum of wings merges with the sound of flowing water. You realize something quietly astonishing. You can't tell whether the dragonflies are following the river or if the river is following them. The air, the water, the movement, it's all the same rhythm now. Life breathing in sync. Historians still argue whether the survivors of this age evolved because of luck or design. But standing here, watching these wings glint in the sunlight, you understand it differently. Survival isn't a competition. It's a collaboration between what remains and what refuses to stop moving. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your thoughts. Scientists discovered that dragonfly wings aren't just aerodynamic, they're self-cleaning. Tiny microscopic bumps repel dust and bacteria. Even the smallest structures on their bodies are engineered for endurance. You chuckle softly. You even invented cleanliness before civilization. You find a patch of smooth stone by the river and sit. The dragonflies move around you, their flight so constant it feels like the air itself has a pulse. Some land on nearby reeds, others hover above your hands, as if examining you with quiet curiosity. You murmur, you've watched the world end and begin again. And you didn't just survive, you remembered how to live. The thought lingers in you like sunlight through leaves. Maybe that's what life really is, the art of remembering joy after ruin. You tilt your head back and watch them climb into the air higher, brighter, rising into a sky that finally belongs to them again. You follow their motion until they blur into pure light. The wind picks up, carrying the hum of wings farther down the valley. You breathe it in, slow and full. The warmth of the new sun fills your lungs. For the first time, you can imagine what the next age might sound like, different voices, different creatures, but the same song beneath it all. You whisper softly, "Keep flying." The air remembers you. A single dragonfly breaks from the swarm and hovers near your face. Its eyes glint like polished gems. You see yourself reflected 1,000 times in their surface, a reminder that even now in this far distant past you belong to the same continuity. The dragonfly turns, catches a thermal and spirals upward until it's just a spark against the bright blue sky. You stay seated by the water a long while, letting the sound of wings and water wash over you. The earth hums quietly, not in exhaustion now but in calm. The light shifts across the surface of the river, and you feel your thoughts slow, your breathing deepen, your pulse fall in rhythm with the world's steady heartbeat. Everything feels lighter. The dragonflies have reclaimed their kingdom, though it no longer looks like one. The world has no thrones, only air, no rulers, only rhythm, and as the breeze brushes your cheek, you realize it's not the survival that matters, it's the grace with which they've done it. You close your eyes, the hum fades into the soft chorus of water and wind. The sunlight warms your eyelids, and for a long gentle moment you feel utterly weightless, suspended between sky and earth like them. The oldest flyers still teaching the world how to move forward by simply staying in motion. The story fades, but the hum doesn't. It lingers, a soft vibration at the edge of hearing, like the memory of air brushing your skin. You can still see them if you close your eyes, the shimmer of wings over a still water, the faint flicker of colour shifting between gold and green. The oldest rhythm in the world, steady and patient. Take a breath. Feel the air fill your chest. You're breathing the same oxygen that once carried them, the same molecules that drifted through Carboniferous forests across Permian deserts over Triassic rivers. Time doesn't erase, it cycles. Every breath is a quiet inheritance. You let the thoughts settle. The idea that survival doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums softly and glitters in sunlight unnoticed. The dragonfly never fought history, it adapted to it. Its secret was never strength. It was timing. It knew when to fly higher, when to hide, when to wait. You can do the same. The world outside your window is built on the bones of these moments, on creatures who refused to stop moving, even when the air burned and the sky dimmed. Their wings may be ancient, but their lesson is modern. Keep adjusting, keep gliding, and when the wind changes, change with it. You imagine lying by that river again, the one from the end of the world. The light softens, the air cools, and the hum becomes a lullaby. Every beat of a wing is a heartbeat, every ripple on the water a breath. The earth is quiet now, not because it's empty, but because it's healing. You feel your shoulders loosen, your thoughts drift slower. There's no rush here, the past has already happened, the future is still waiting. The present is just this air moving softly, light shifting gently, the smallest creatures reminding you that continuity is its own kind of strength. Somewhere far away, millions of years distant, a modern dragonfly skims the surface of a pond under starlight. It doesn't know its history. It doesn't need to. Every cell in its body remembers. And maybe deep down, so do you. Take another breath. Let the air move through you as if you too had wings. Feel the stillness of the room merge with the faint rhythm of life outside, the hum of a ceiling fan, the night air pressing against your window, the steady pulse of your heartbeat. It's all one sound. You can rest now. The world is still turning. The air still remembers. Sleep easy, traveller of ages. The dragonflies are still flying. Thank you, subscribe now, and don't miss what's to come.